An air passenger plane crashed only moments after taking off from Jakarta, Indonesia. The brand new boat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our stream here on this Monday, October 29th. We're glad that you're with us. You're looking at what was, here it is, still a live look in Atlanta at a scene outside of where a package was intercepted from arriving at CNN. Another package addressed to CNN, but this was thwarted, and we don't know right now, no word on if there is a connection to the other suspicious packages from last week. But we are keeping our eye on this, and we'll keep you informed throughout the day. But I want to turn now to some of the stories from over the weekend, including, of course, that horrible shooting in Pittsburgh. Here is Lauren Blanchard from Fox News and a summary of that from this weekend and how people are reacting to that story.
Prosecutors say they will be seeking the death penalty against the man suspected of Saturday's deadly synagogue shooting.
Words of hate are unwelcome in Pittsburgh.
A heartbroken community in Pittsburgh coming together Sunday night to remember the 11 worshipers gunned down during weekend services at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Barry Werber survived the massacre, hiding in a storage closet with the rabbi and a few other congregants, including 88-year-old Mel Wax, who was fatally shot when he opened the door to see if the shooting stopped. Werber says the accused gunman, Robert Bowers, then entered their hiding spot.
He didn't see us, thank God. I could see that he looked around only because there was a shaft of light as he opened the door. He stepped over Mel's body, didn't pay any attention, stepped back, and walked out.
46-year-old Bowers terrorized worshipers using an assault rifle and 3 handguns, killing 8 men and 3 women and injuring 6 others. Prior to the shooting, Bowers made anti-Semitic comments on social media, and afterward, while receiving medical treatment, he allegedly told an officer he wanted, quote, all Jews to die.
I don't know where he learned that the Jews were responsible for all the ills in the world, but he's not the first and he won't be the last. And unfortunately, that I hate to say it in this context, but that's our cross to bear.
Bowers legally owned and was licensed to carry the guns he allegedly used during the shooting. He is expected to appear in court later today. In Pittsburgh, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Heartfelt vigils in Pittsburgh on Sunday for victims of the deadly shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. 11 people were killed, 6 others wounded, including 4 responding officers. Many foreign countries are sending their support to the Jewish community there. In Jerusalem, projections showed the Israeli and American flags as one entity, reading, "We're with you, Pittsburgh." The Israeli cabinet began its weekly meeting with a moment of silence for the shooting victims.
We must stand and fight back against all these barbaric fronts, against this zealous, brutal anti-Semitism.
At the Vatican, Pope Francis denounced what he called an inhuman act of violence. The pontiff led followers in prayers for Pittsburgh, calling for an end to the flames of hatred.
May the Lord help us to extinguish the breeding grounds of hatred that grow in our societies, strengthening the sense of humanity, the respect for life.
In France, which has seen its own recent anti-Semitic attacks, people lit candles beneath makeshift signs bearing the victims' names and ages.
We believe that when American Jews, when French Jews are targeted because they are Jews, it's a matter for all the citizens.
British Prime Minister Theresa May was one of the first foreign leaders to respond, writing on Twitter, "Our thoughts are with the Jewish community in Pittsburgh and all those affected by this sickening and cowardly act." Jane Metzler, Fox News.
No matter the corner of Pittsburgh, the city's 300,000 people share 2 things in common: black and gold.
Let's go!
Those colors carrying the Steel City through ups and downs, including Saturday's mass shooting that left 11 dead and 6 injured at a synagogue.
We are a family. That was never exemplified more than today in the aftermath of this tragedy in Squirrel Hill.
Pittsburghers sought refuge from the weekend's tragedy at Sunday's Steelers game, determined to send a message larger than beat the Browns.
Pittsburgh's strong, and we're going to come together as a family, and nothing's going to stop us.
I think it's not, about our differences now. It's really about, how we're all the same.
And that feeling of unity and love spilled over from the stands onto the field, with players also offering their condolences to families of the victims. A hush fell over Heinz Field Sunday in a moment of silence commemorating the lives lost. Steelers president Art Rooney released a statement saying, in part, "Our hearts are heavy, but we must stand against anti-Semitism and hate crimes of any nature and come together to preserve our values and our community." Professional athletes boasting the black and gold echoed these sentiments on Twitter, many sharing the Steelers' altered logo featuring the Star of David as a gesture of support for the Jewish community. In Pittsburgh, Emily Ikeda, Fox News.
The midterm elections are a week from tomorrow. There's not much evidence, though, of anyone tamping down the rhetoric, despite recent elections are a
So some stories there about the Pittsburgh tragedy this weekend, and I want to make it clear also, we are waiting. Apparently the shooting suspect is due in court later today. It's unclear if he will actually appear, if his injuries were too greatly sustained, that he actually won't appear in court today. But we will be watching and waiting for that in about the 1 o'clock hour this afternoon to bring that to you live if we do get it in from our channel. On now to some other stories of the day. As we get closer, we inch closer to Election Day. We will be, by the way, having a little preview and some Election Day coverage for you here on our channel. So make sure you stay tuned with us and subscribe to our channel. We'll be streaming a lot of the live results on Election Day on November 6th. So if you're interested in that, not only just the local DMV politics, but nationwide as well, we're going to be streaming all of that on our YouTube channel and on our website, foxfdc.com. So join us there on November 6th. But preempting all of that political coverage, some of the stories from the weekend and into today that are making the rounds as some of our top stories. And as always, we're going to break in with any video that we have live coming in for our live stream today. But take a look. This is Doug Luzader from Fox News channel, highlighting some of the politics from the weekend.
A week from tomorrow. There's not much evidence, though, of anyone tamping down the rhetoric despite recent events. The President and First Lady at the White House yesterday handing out Halloween treats. But the smiling faces here are just part of a brief respite from the all-out political warfare being waged by both sides. A short time later came this tweet from the President. The fake news is doing everything in their power to blame Republicans, conservatives, and me for the division and hatred that has been going on for so long in our country. Actually, it is their fake and dishonest reporting which is causing problems far greater than they understand.
These are foolish and very stupid people.
And the president has been under fire by many in the media and elsewhere, accusing him of creating an atmosphere that can foster violence, especially after the series of pipe bombs sent to political figures on the left, and an attack on a Pittsburgh synagogue that left 11 dead.
The president's comments are helping to stir the pot even further.
But with control of Congress hanging in the balance on November 6th, don't look for anyone to pull punches as voters head to the polls. And while there is a debate about tone, others question whether political figures can be held responsible for specific attacks, from the person who shot up a Republican congressional baseball practice last year to the suspect behind the letter bombs.
These are deranged people, and that is what we need to look at. I don't see attaching politics to this as helpful at all.
But this is also a time when we attach politics to just about everything, and a civility in our discourse is pretty hard to find. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Thousands in the migrant caravan who have spent the past few weeks headed to the U.S. border, taking a much-needed break from walking on Sunday to rest, eat, and get medical care.
It's very difficult. There's a lot of sun. Children are very dehydrated.
But the group vowing to complete the remainder of the journey, with the nearest crossing in McAllen, Texas, about 1,000 miles away, and twice as far if they head to the Tijuana, San Diego area. Over the weekend, a new group of migrants who call themselves a second caravan pushing through the southern Mexico border, but they were met with police resistance as they tried to cross into the country. Ultimately, the smaller band is hoping to follow in the larger group's footsteps and reach the U.S.
We had a session with all of the migrants, and a security committee of 300 people was formed for caravan security along the road, to use only one lane, to go orderly, to be here caring for everyone.
In addition to those caravans, about 300 people in San Salvador formed a third group and began making their way north. On Friday, the Mexican president offered the migrants shelter, medicine, education, and jobs as part of their You Are Home program. While some accepted the offer, many others say their sights are on reaching the border.
We aren't asking for the American dream. We're asking for a world dream, to be able to help our loved ones, our children, our spouses, and all the people that we're responsible for, and nothing more.
In New York, Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
The Dodgers were hoping to win tonight and push the series back to Boston, but the Red Sox proved to be too much, making the game all about the home runs.
For the Red Sox, it was a night to remember that capped off a franchise record 108-win year. The Sox beating the Dodgers to win the World Series, their fourth in the last 15 years. First baseman Steve Pearce leading Boston's offense with 2 home runs just one night after hitting a homer and 3-run double, earning the series MVP trophy.
Best feeling of my life. This is what you're growing up wishing that you could be a part of something like this.
Another milestone, Alex Cora becoming just the 5th rookie manager and first from Puerto Rico to win a World Series title. He paid tribute to the Red Sox organization and says if the team's owners will let him, he's going to take the trophy to his hometown in Puerto Rico.
First of all, they gave me a chance. They saw me as a capable manager. It starts with talent. It starts with ownership.
The Dodgers go home empty-handed for the second year in a row. They lost to Houston last year, also here in Dodger Stadium. Manager Dave Roberts says he's proud of his team, even if the Sox offense was too much in the end.
We found ways to win baseball games and ran up against a very good ball club, and just a little bit too much for us.
The final score tonight was 5-1. This is the Red Sox 9th World Series championship. In Los Angeles, Ray Bogan, Fox News.
Sharon Hook usually spends her Saturdays running errands.
Big Lots, shower curtain, having my bathroom remodeled, and I need to go pick up a few things.
But before she picks some things up, she's got one more stop to drop things off.
It's an event in which citizens can legally dispose of controlled substances, prescription drugs that they aren't using and are just sitting in their medicine cabinets.
And in the 8 years of the DEA drug take-back, they've gotten bags and bags and bags of prescriptions turned in for a variety of reasons.
We found some old medication that we had tucked away in an old piece of furniture, and I didn't want to contribute to something in the environment or to get in the wrong hands.
Well, we had a bunch of prescriptions that were in the way and we weren't taking anymore, so we thought we'd get rid of them.
And they aren't alone. Last September, Americans packed up 350 tons. That's more than 702,000 pounds of prescription drugs. In its 10 previous take-back events, the DEA and its partners have taken in more than 2,750 tons of pills, or 5.5 million pounds. And Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dante Sorianello hopes to see the numbers grow for safety.
We sit in medicine cabinets throughout the country, and when they're sitting in medicine cabinets, a lot of times unauthorized people can gain access to them, and then they get out onto the streets.
It's kind of difficult and hard to get used to, but it's really, really fun.
These players aren't sporting typical soccer gear.
Connor! There! This sport is like regular soccer, but you're blindfolded and it's for the blind.
Cotty, 3 steps back. Each player wearing goggles, leveling the playing field for those with different variables of sight, meaning everyone's ears are focused on one sound.
I have really good hearing, so I don't have that distraction of the vision. So when I run around, I listen very carefully where the ball is.
And when they get to the ball, players are careful to not kick with their toe, but instead put the ball under their foot.
The reason we don't want to kick it with our toe, is because we're going to lose the ball, and that's not going to be good.
Just one of the many reasons this sport is so challenging.
Dribbling, it can be hard, and like sometimes when you lose the ball, so when you have to search with your feet in like a sweeping motion, that can be hard.
Casey passing.
But with some great coaches, the students take over the field.
I can't play a lot of sports, and like goal ball and line soccer is easier, it's more fun that I can actually play. I'm not really that active sometimes, but when I do have the chance to do something that I like, then I will get really active and run around.
These players hope everyone seeing this new sport will remember.
It's not about what we can see, it's about what we can do.
In section 217, row 10, seat 5 of Pfizer Forum sits a sports fan like few others.
I actually like sitting up high because you can see plays develop.
Scott Boltman knows a thing or two about absorbing the atmosphere of an arena.
This is just kind of a hobby that I've been doing the last 5 or 6 years.
Boltman has traveled to venues across the country. This visit marks a milestone.
This today completes my Club 123 journey.
It's the end of an impressive quest.
Visit to every Major League, NFL, NHL, and NBA stadium.
From Oklahoma City to Seattle to Indianapolis, Boltman has seen it all. But he says Lambeau Field left an incredible impact.
I really like the history involved, the architecture.
The Indiana native even made it to Miller Park for the NLCS.
It's a cool way to travel and see the United States.
Boltman's journey wouldn't be complete without walking around Pfizer Forum's concourse.
Tonight it was really good to see all the food options, the beer options. We're just seeing like the team store.
His next goal is to visit every college football stadium.
If you want to do something, follow your dreams. You know, this isn't something that happened overnight.
A sports fanatic's dream fulfilled, now joining a league of legends. In Milwaukee, Aaron Maben, Fox 6 News.
Back in the newsroom, I want to alert you to continue to check out this scene here outside of the post office in Atlanta, where there has been another suspicious package discovered. Now, we did mention to you earlier this was all intercepted before the package did get to CNN headquarters, but you can see this scene right here. The post office was evacuated due to this. And I want to show you the statement from Jeff Zucker, CNN's president. He put this out this morning. Check it out. You can kind of read it there for yourself, saying that it was intercepted and there was no imminent danger to the CNN center because all of the mail is actually screened at off-site facilities as of last week. So last week, with the more than a dozen parcels that contained pipe bombs mailed to prominent Democrats and the New York City CNN bureau, after all of that and none of those bombs detonated, thank goodness, they did decide to screen the mail at an off-site facility, hence this statement here. So they're learning more about this, but again, we can say that this is all coming about a week after the first few parcels were found yesterday, and they were believed to be mailed by the suspect, Cesar Sayoc, who, by the way, is due in court today. We're going to have our eyes on any video that's coming in about his court appearance later this afternoon.
Form can be a symbol, but for FTA Force, it's a way to fight back.
We just know a lot of kids who have been through it and didn't make it, and we want to put a stop to that.
Names of friends, family, classmates, and neighbors, all who took their lives because of bullying, inscribed on the side.
It means everything to me to wear her name, and I want to wear the name in honor of everybody else that has taken their own life.
Casey Chamberlain lost her friend in May.
She would want me to push forward and stand out for her. She wouldn't want me to be upset. She would want me to stand up and make a change. So I want to do that, and I want to do that for everybody that's bullied everywhere.
For kids like 12-year-old Desiree Hovis from Blue Springs.
I was super happy to be at school that day. And then once that I opened my locker, it was very hard to stay in that situation. It said, I'm ugly, I'm fat. It said to kill myself, and it was very hard to take.
She was scared. She was scared to go to school. She was getting bullied. She got her hair pulled in the hallway. She received messages on social media, a lot of threats all the time.
You want her to stay strong and that she is awesome.
The girls invited Hovis to their game to show her while a few bullies might get in her way, they will always have her back.
This girl is so beautiful and pretty, and we just want to bring everything to her and show her that she does mean the world to us and that we will
stand behind her in her fight. She's not alone.
It's amazing, and school on Monday, I think I'm going to just kick through the week and do what I need to do.
The girls say it's their mission to make sure every teen knows that they're worthy, because the last thing they want to do is wear another name.
We just want to help people, know that they're better and they have a worth in this world and that they really do mean something. 4 shot 3, 1, 2, 3, 4!
Sheree Honeycutt, Fox 4 News.
And that'll sum up some of our top stories of the day, which we will kind of throw in here and there throughout the stream here today, so you can stay up on everything that has been happening, including that Pittsburgh shooting from this weekend. So more details to come about that as the suspect does apparently appear in court later today. But on the other side of things in sports, the Boston Red Sox winning the 2018 World Series yesterday in Los Angeles with a score of 5-1. And of course, Boston is already prepping for that parade. So we're going to have the mayor and some other officials detailing what they're doing to secure the city for that championship parade coming up.
I just want to start, not necessarily on a sour note, but I want to just make sure that we keep the people of Pittsburgh in our thoughts and prayers as we celebrate a World Series last night. That city's going through mourning, so just want to, for all the people watching today, just make sure you say a special little prayer for the people of Pittsburgh here. I want to congratulate Alex Cora and the Boston Red Sox and the entire organization for an incredible run, 119 wins from start to finish, and I didn't realize till last night that they had won the spring training league, and they won the regular league, and then they won, obviously, the World Series last night, so it's exciting here in the city of Boston. I want to congratulate Red Sox Nation for our 9th World Championship here in Boston. This is an all-time great team that we had. I think a lot of people enjoyed watching this team. Everybody contributed. I was talking to people, talking on the way into work this morning and thinking about everybody in this whole team. Everyone had a special play in this World Series. So congratulations to the entire team for your resilience and your positivity in the way you carried yourself on the field and off the field. And even last night during the interview session, thank you to all the players for the great work they did. These players are role models, and we want to celebrate them in Boston style. A championship duck boat parade will take place on Wednesday, starting 11 o'clock on Boylston Street by Fenway Park. It will continue down Boylston all the way to Boston Common, where they'll take a left on Beacon Street, on Tremont Street. It'll continue up Tremont to Cambridge and end at Stanford Street. And to be clear, there will be no rally at City Hall Plaza. This is just the parade that we're going to be doing on Wednesday. I'm excited as mayor to host my first Red Sox parade. I was getting used to the Patriots parades, and now we have a Red Sox parade, so I'm happy about that. And we have some great experiences here in our city, but we're not taking anything for granted. We hope to see a big crowd out there, but we do have a few messages out there. Do not try to drive to the parade. Take public transportation. Chief Green from the MBTA Police is going to get up here in a moment and speak. So we're encouraging everyone to take public transportation when you come in town. The MBTA is going to be putting on extra service, and again, I'll let the chief talk about that. There'll be traffic and parking restrictions surrounding the route. This morning, we're working on a webpage. It'll be up in a little bit. It'll be boston.gov/Red Sox Parade. Boston.gov/Red Sox Parade. I don't think it's up yet, but it's up. It's up. So it's up right now. So anyone who wants to get details, please go to that website. As far as safety goes, I'm encouraging people, don't do anything on the streets of Boston on Wednesday morning that you wouldn't do in front of your own house. Be respectful of the city. Be respectful of the property, be respectful of the people, be respectful of the businesses, be respectful of the Red Sox. When you come into town, just come in to enjoy the parade. There's going to be probably a lot of kids in town as well, but we're going to be asking you to be respectful. The Boston Police and their partners will be out in numbers to make sure everything and everyone is safe and has a great time. During last night, we pretty much had a great celebration in the city of Boston. However, we did have one arrest, a destruction of property arrest. Other than that, we had a great night of celebration in the city of Boston. I want to thank the fans. I want to thank all the colleges. I want to thank Boston Police Department, all the first responders for doing an incredible job making sure that people were safe last night after the Red Sox won the World Series and throughout the whole series. We had extra police out there making sure that the areas were safe during the World Series and during the playoffs. So again, I want to thank all our first responders and our police department for the great work that they did. Boston has certainly set a new tone around celebrations, and maybe it's because we have a lot of them, or maybe it's just because the way that we conduct ourselves. So again, I want to thank you all. We are a city of champions, so let's celebrate like champions. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Commissioner Gross, and then we're going to turn it over to Chief Green, and then I'll open up for any questions that people might have.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's a congratulations not only to the Red Sox, but the city of Boston. For the most part, thousands of people celebrated peacefully, except for one individual that the mayor just mentioned. Well, what can we say? Now it's time to celebrate, but as we've said during the entire series, we've been here before. Let's act like it. So we would ask everyone to act responsibly and be respectful of the other revelers in the parade. Also, we will have full coverage in our neighborhoods. But for those attending the parade, no public drinking. Alcohol will not be tolerated. And you should know this should be common sense, but no weapons at all either. So we fully expect to have a great parade, and I can go over the route for you again if you'd like. Again, the parade starts at 11. It'll be starting from Fenway Park. We'll start at Fenway, we'll go to Lansdowne, take a right on Ipswich Street, a left on Boylston Street, and then we'll follow Boylston Street, left on Tremont the wrong way. And we'll follow it straight onto Cambridge to Stanford Street, where the parade will end. Again, it's time to celebrate, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to our entire first responder family, from law enforcement to fire to EMS, that made sure that our series was safe and that everyone was protected in the city. As well, several outside agencies also assisted from their law enforcement councils. So again, let's celebrate responsibly. So now I'll turn it over to Chief Green.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, this doesn't get old. I mean, I think this is my 11th championship in the last, 16 years? It just doesn't get old. That being said, the transit police are well experienced and prepared for special events such as Wednesday's parade. We encourage everyone, as the mayor says, to come into the city of Boston utilizing the MBTA transit system. We will have increased coverage, both uniformed and in plain clothes, throughout the system to ensure a safe and travel by all. We ask our riders to be respectful to one another and especially mindful of those with young children, the elderly, and people with disabilities as you utilize the MBTA transit system. And as the Commissioner stated, alcohol consumption and or unruly behavior will not be tolerated at all on the MBTA. Currently, I mean, we got updates from the BRIC. There are no incredible threats to this event. With that being said, we also ask our riders to please, if you see something, say something. Nothing's too small. We need you to be our extra eyes out there. Contact us immediately, and we will send an officer out to investigate. With your help, we can have a safe and enjoyable celebration. Now, as far as service with the MBTA, we will have additional / extra services on all branches to include the commuter rail. There will be updates with that forthcoming. Thank you.
Any questions? Because the Red Sox have always historically done something at the park with people, and then it comes in town. The Patriots have always done the rally outside here. I can't remember what the Bruins did or the Celtics, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in the Cup next year or so.
And can you talk about the fact that it's Halloween as well? You mentioned
Yeah, it's tough timing, but unfortunately, like the Patriots, a lot of it's contractual. I mean, the players have certain times, and you know, if they had won the World Series in a Game 7, we probably could have pushed it to a Saturday, but we got it done in 5. So it is about making sure we can maximize the amount of people being here as well, the amount of players being here. So unfortunately, it's just the way it falls. I think the only parade I think that's fallen on a Saturday has been when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup in 2011. But every time it just seems this way, but it's also contractual.
How many people are you expecting based on past rallies?
It's hard to say. Any idea, Billy?
I mean, we've had estimates of up to 1 million people that are coming down for the parade. Can we get 1 million people here? It's going to be a beautiful day out. I certainly wouldn't dispute those numbers at all.
And people, as far as arrival time, anytime they can ride, or do you prefer a time?
They should probably come in earlier. We're going to shut the streets down in the morning. What time we shut the streets down?
So the parking restrictions will be in place starting at 12 a.m. on Tuesday going into Wednesday. So that'll be posted. It'll be posted on bpdnews.com as well. So let everyone know that along the route that I just stated, there will be parking restrictions, and we will start towing at 12 a.m. So all of those streets should be shut down so we can take advantage of a clear route.
Commissioner, any rules for costumes for parade goers, and any indication if any of the Red Sox will be wearing costumes during the parade?
Well, it is Halloween, you know. I'm glad I don't have a face for radio, but I'll just stay as I am. But they probably will, who knows. But if you're in costume, we just ask you to act respectfully, and please, no costumes with replica firearms. It won't be tolerated. They shouldn't be on the route. We don't agree with costumes that have replica firearms because it doesn't bode well for the festive atmosphere that we expect to enjoy.
Commissioner, can you talk a little bit about just how you guys, you mentioned the one arrest last night. It was a relatively safe night, but back in 2004, which was obviously a special year, was a more difficult crowd to control. How have you guys improved?
I have to honestly say, we've been stating it all week. We've been here before, and thousands of people, except for one individual, didn't get the message. I mean, we actually had people, for the most part, stay on the sidewalks and not block the roadways unless they were crossing the streets. They acted very well when they were in the area of the Commons. No one was disrespectful to the officers. A lot of high fives, a lot of celebratory congrats. That was it, just one individual, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Act like you have some sense.
In Pittsburgh, and we have big events like this, how challenging it is, and it is a big concern, obviously, with that many people, 1 million people, like you said, in light of what happened in Pittsburgh, something to go wrong.
Well, thank God for the experience of everyone you see up here. Unfortunately, we've been through terrible tragedies before, but that just made us stronger in preparation for major events. So we often have tabletop exercises or reality-based training so that when something does happen, we're all communicating, using the same tactics, and then together, along with just what Chief Green said, also utilizing the public to be our eyes and ears. So unfortunately, tragedies make sure that we're well prepared.
Are there any new security measures that you're taking? I know for a time, the major concern was people who could drive a vehicle into a crowd. I mean, is there anything new that you're looking at?
So the past security measures that we've taken worked very well. So we fully expect to implement them as well. And again, the best security possible is the thousands and thousands of pairs of eyes that are of our community. That's what we're talking about, community policing. Help us police this event.
Are there any extra challenges with it being a holiday, not just people being in costume maybe, but other events going around the city, certain streets being closed for trick-or-treating and Beacon Hill and other neighborhoods?
Well, the parade will happen in the morning into the afternoon. And then we'll transition into the festivity of Halloween night. And as usual, we've prepared for that as well. And again, just ask everyone to act responsibly. You have a lot of little children out at night, grandparents, parents. Let's just act responsibly. And again, I hate to see replica firearms. Shouldn't even be in the household or part of the costume at all. It just makes for a feeling of uneasiness when you see that. But let's have fun on Halloween night. Dress up as the mayor.
Are you all feeling the strain on your resources after the recent shootings and now the celebration? I mean, you've got a lot of officers on the streets. Are you feeling it in your organization?
Well, so these aren't regular shifts for us. So to provide additional resources, you cancel days off unless you have a scheduled vacation. It's called what we call a full call-up. And we do that 3 or 4 times a year to make sure that everyone knows we have coverage in our districts where people live and a coverage for the venue. So there's no strain. Well planned for.
Commissioner, expectation on how long the parade will last. Once it starts at 11, how long will it go to?
2 hours. We're hoping 2 hours. We don't want anyone jumping off the duck boats. So we're going to keep everybody on the boats in 2 hours.
Can you do one last question, everyone?
Let me just say this. Anyone who's dressed up tomorrow, be respectful. And whoever you dress up as, character, don't think you're in character. Don't think you'd be climbing poles, things like that. And also, if you come in early, I'd suggest you start to come in probably around 8 o'clock. Remember that people are trying to get to work as well that time, so be responsible and act responsible they played with character all year long, and let's celebrate with character. Boston, and go Red Sox. All right.
Oh, we good?
They will be seeking the death penalty against the man suspected of Saturday's deadly synagogue shooting.
Words of hate are unwelcome in Pittsburgh.
A heartbroken community in Pittsburgh coming together Sunday night to remember the 11 worshipers gunned down during weekend services at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Barry Werber survived the massacre, hiding in a storage closet with the rabbi and a few other congregants, including 88-year-old Mel Wax, who was fatally shot when he opened the door to see if the shooting stopped. Werber says the accused gunman, Robert Bowers, then entered their hiding spot.
He didn't see us, thank God. I could see that he looked around only because there was a shaft of light as he opened the door. He stepped over Mel's body, didn't pay any attention, stepped back, and walked out.
46-year-old Bowers terrorized worshipers using an assault rifle and 3 handguns, killing 8 men and 3 women and injuring 6 others. Prior to the shooting, Bowers made anti-Semitic comments on social media, and afterward, while receiving medical treatment, he allegedly told an officer he wanted, quote, all Jews to die.
I don't know where he learned that the Jews were responsible for all the ills in the world, but he's not the first and he won't be the last. And unfortunately, that I hate to say it in this context, but that's our cross to bear.
Bowers legally owned and was licensed to carry the guns he allegedly used during the shooting. He is expected to appear in court later today. In Pittsburgh, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Heartfelt vigils in Pittsburgh on Sunday for victims of the deadly shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. 11 people were killed, 6 others wounded, including 4 responding officers. Many foreign countries are sending their support to the Jewish community there. In Jerusalem, projections showed the Israeli and American flags as one entity, reading, "We are with you, Pittsburgh." The Israeli cabinet began its weekly meeting with a moment of silence for the shooting victims.
We must stand and fight back against all these barbaric fronts, against this zealous, brutal anti-Semitism.
At the Vatican, Pope Francis denounced what he called an inhuman act of violence. The pontiff led followers in prayers for Pittsburgh, calling for an end to the flames of hatred.
May the Lord help us to extinguish the breeding grounds of hatred that grow in our societies, strengthening the sense of humanity, the respect for life.
In France, which has seen its own recent anti-Semitic attacks, people lit candles beneath makeshift signs bearing the victims' names and ages.
We believe that when when French Jews are targeted because they are Jews, it's a matter for all the citizens.
British Prime Minister Theresa May was one of the first foreign leaders to respond, writing on Twitter, "Our thoughts are with the Jewish community in Pittsburgh and all those affected by this sickening and cowardly act." Jane Metzler, Fox News.
No matter the corner of Pittsburgh, the city's 300,000 people share 2 things in common: black and gold. Let's go! Those colors carrying the Steel City through ups and downs, including Saturday's mass shooting that left 11 dead and 6 injured at a synagogue.
We are a family. That was never exemplified more than today in the aftermath of this tragedy in Squirrel Hill.
Pittsburghers sought refuge from the weekend's tragedy at Sunday's Steelers game, determined to send a message larger than beat the Browns.
Pittsburgh's strong, and we're going to come together as a family, and nothing's going to stop us.
I think it's not, about our differences now. It's really about, how we're all the same.
And that feeling of unity and love spilled over from the stands onto the field, with players also offering their condolences to families of the victims. A hush fell over Heinz Field Sunday in a moment of silence commemorating the lives lost. Steelers president Art Rooney released a statement saying, in part, "Our hearts are heavy, but we must stand against anti-Semitism and hate crimes of any nature and come together to preserve our values and our community." Professional athletes boasting the black and gold echoed these sentiments on Twitter, many sharing the Steelers' altered logo featuring the Star of David as a gesture of support for the Jewish community. In Pittsburgh, Emily Ikeda, Fox News.
The midterm elections are a week from tomorrow. There's not much evidence, though, of anyone tamping down the rhetoric despite recent events. The President and First Lady at the White House yesterday handing out Halloween treats. But the smiling faces here are just part of a brief respite from the all-out political warfare being waged by both sides. A short time later came this tweet from the President. The fake news is doing everything in their power to blame Republicans, conservatives, and me for the division and hatred that has been going on for so long in our country. Actually, it is their fake and dishonest reporting which is causing problems far greater than they understand.
These are foolish and very stupid people.
And the president has been under fire by many in the media and elsewhere, accusing him of creating an atmosphere that can foster violence, especially after the series of pipe bombs sent to political figures on the left, and an attack on a Pittsburgh synagogue that left 11 dead.
The president's comments are helping to stir the pot even further.
But with control of Congress hanging in the balance on November 6th, don't look for anyone to pull punches as voters head to the polls. And while there is a debate about tone, others question whether political figures can be held responsible for specific attacks, from the person who shot up a Republican congressional baseball practice last year to the suspect behind the letter bombs.
These are deranged people, and that is what we need to look at. I don't see attaching politics to this as helpful at all.
But this is also a time when we attach politics to just about everything, and a civility in our discourse is pretty hard to find. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Thousands in the migrant caravan who have spent the past few weeks headed to the U.S. border, taking a much-needed break from walking on Sunday to rest, eat, and get medical care.
It's very difficult. There's a lot of sun. Children are very dehydrated.
But the group vowing to complete the remainder of the journey, with the nearest crossing in McAllen, Texas, about 1,000 miles away, and twice as far if they head to the Tijuana-San Diego area. Over the weekend, a new group of migrants who call themselves a second caravan pushing through the southern Mexico border, but they were met with police resistance as they tried to cross into the country. Ultimately, the smaller band is hoping to follow in the larger group's footsteps and reach the U.S.
We had a session with all of the migrants, and a security committee of 300 people was formed for caravan security along the road, to use only one lane, to go orderly, to be here caring for everyone.
In addition to those caravans, about 300 people in San Salvador formed a third group and began making their way north. On Friday, the Mexican president offered the migrants shelter, medicine, education, and jobs as part of their You Are Home program. While some accepted the offer, many others say their sights are on reaching the border.
We aren't asking for the American dream, we're asking for a world dream, to be able to help our loved ones, our children, our spouses, and all the people that we're responsible for, and nothing more.
In New York, Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
The Dodgers were hoping to win tonight and push the series back to Boston, but the Red Sox proved to be too much, making the game all about the home runs.
For the Red Sox, it was a night to remember that capped off a franchise record 108-win year. The Sox beating the Dodgers to win the World Series their fourth in the last 15 years. First baseman Steve Pearce leading Boston's offense with 2 home runs just one night after hitting a homer and 3-run double, earning the series MVP trophy.
Best feeling of my life. This is what you're growing up wishing that you could be a part of something like this.
Another milestone, Alex Cora becoming just the 5th rookie manager and first from Puerto Rico to win a World Series title. He paid tribute to the Red Sox organization and says if the team's owners will let him, he's going to take the trophy to his hometown in Puerto Rico.
First of all, they gave me a chance. They saw me as a capable manager. It starts with talent. It starts with ownership.
The Dodgers go home empty-handed for the 2nd year in a row. They lost to Houston last year, also here in Dodger Stadium. Manager Dave Roberts says he's proud of his team, even if the Sox offense was too much in the end.
We found ways to win baseball games and ran up against a very good ball club, and just a little bit too much for us.
The final score tonight was 5-1. This is the Red Sox 9th World Series championship. In Los Angeles, Ray Bogan, Fox News.
Sharon Hook usually spends her Saturdays running errands.
Big Lots, shower curtain, having my bathroom remodeled, and I need to go pick up a few things.
But before she picks some things up, she's got one more stop to drop things off.
It's an event in which citizens can legally dispose of controlled substances, prescription drugs that they aren't using and are just sitting in their medicine cabinets.
And in the 8 years of the DEA drug take-back, they've gotten bags and bags and bags of prescriptions turned in for a variety of reasons.
We found some old medication that we had tucked away in an old piece of furniture, and I didn't want to contribute to something in the environment or it for get in the wrong hands.
Well, we had a bunch of prescriptions that were in the way and we weren't taking anymore, so we thought we'd get rid of them.
And they aren't alone. Last September, Americans packed up 350 tons. That's more than 702,000 pounds of prescription drugs. In its 10 previous take-back events, the DEA and its partners have taken in more than 2,750 tons of pills, or 5.5 million pounds. And Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dante Sorianello hopes to see the numbers grow for safety.
These sit in medicine cabinets throughout the country, and when they're sitting in medicine cabinets, a lot of times unauthorized people can gain access to them, and then they get out onto the streets.
It's kind of difficult and hard to get used to, but it's really, really fun.
These players aren't sporting typical soccer gear.
Connor, there! This sport is like regular soccer, but you're blindfolded and it's for the blind.
Toddy, 3 steps back. Each player wearing goggles, leveling the playing field for those with different variables of sight, meaning everyone's ears are focused on one sound.
I have really good hearing, so I don't have that distraction of the vision. So when I run around, I listen very carefully where the ball is.
And when they get to the ball, players are careful to not kick with their toe, but instead put the ball under their foot.
The reason we don't want to kick it with our toe is because we're going to lose the ball, and that's not going to be good.
Just one of the many reasons this sport is so challenging.
Dribbling can be hard, and like sometimes when you lose the ball, so when you have to search with your feet in like a sweeping motion, that can be hard.
Casey passing.
But with some great coaches, the students take over the field.
I can't play a lot of sports, and like goal ball and line soccer is easier, it's more fun that I can actually play. I'm not really that active sometimes, but when I do have the chance to do something that I like, then I will get really active and run around.
These players hope everyone seeing this new sport will remember.
It's not about what we can see, it's about what we can do.
In section 217, row 10, seat 5 of Pfizer Forum sits a sports fan like few others.
I actually like sitting up high because you can see plays develop.
Scott Boltman knows a thing or two about absorbing the atmosphere of an arena.
This is just kind of a hobby that I've been doing the last 5 or 6 years.
Boltman has traveled to venues across the country. This visit marks a milestone.
This today completes my Club 123 journey.
It's the end of an impressive quest.
visit to every Major League, NFL, NHL, and NBA stadium.
From Oklahoma City to Seattle to Indianapolis, Boltman has seen it all. But he says Lambeau Field left an incredible impact.
I really like the history involved, the architecture.
The Indiana native even made it to Miller Park for the NLCS.
It's a cool way to travel and see the United States.
Boltman's journey wouldn't be complete without walking around Pfizer Forum's concourse.
Tonight it was really good to see all the food options, the beer options, and just seeing like the team store.
His next goal is to visit every college football stadium.
If you want to do something, follow your dreams. You know, this isn't something that happened overnight.
A sports fanatic's dream fulfilled, now joining a league of legends. In Milwaukee, Aaron Mabin, Fox 6 News.
A uniform can be a symbol, but for FTA Force, it's a way to fight back.
We just know a lot of kids who have been through it and didn't make it, and we want to put a stop to that.
Names of friends, family, classmates, and neighbors, all who took their lives because of bullying, inscribed on the side.
It means everything to me to wear her name, and I want to wear the name in honor of everybody else that has taken their own life.
Casey Chamberlain lost her friend in May.
She would want me to push forward and stand out for her. She wouldn't want me to be upset. She would want me to stand up and make a change. So I want to do that, and I want to do that for everybody that's bullied everywhere.
For kids like 12-year-old Desiree Hovis from Blue Springs.
I was super happy to be at school that day. And then once that I opened my locker, it was very hard to stay in that situation. It said, I'm ugly, I'm fat. It said to kill myself, and it was very hard to take.
She was scared. She was scared to go to school. She was getting bullied. She got her hair pulled in the hallway. She received messages on social media, a lot of threats all the time.
We want her to stay strong and that she is awesome.
The girls invited Hovis to their game to show her while a few bullies might get in her way, they will always have her back.
This girl is so beautiful and pretty, and we just want to bring everything to her and show her that she does mean the world to us and that we will stand behind her in her fight. She's not alone.
It's amazing, and school on Monday, I think I'm going to just kick through the week and do what I need to do.
The girls say it's their mission to make sure every teen knows that they're worthy, because the last thing they want to do is wear another name.
We just want to help people, know that they're better and they have a worth in this world and that they really do mean something. 4, 7, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4!
Sheree Honeycutt, Fox 4 News.
Prosecutors say they will be seeking the death penalty against the man suspected of Saturday's deadly synagogue shooting.
Words of hate are unwelcome in Pittsburgh.
A heartbroken community in Pittsburgh coming together Sunday night to remember the 11 worshipers gunned down during weekend services at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Barry Werber survived the mass. The death penalty against the man suspected of Saturday.
Words of hate are unwelcome.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dan Hartman. I'm a member of the steering committee of the Boston Lawyers chapter of the Federalist Society. I'd like to bring your attention, as you leave today, there are reading materials. Please sign up, join our emailing list so you can hear about future events like this. The Boston Lawyers chapter is beyond honored today to be hosting this event on the future of religious liberty with three distinguished guests. Jordan Lawrence from the Alliance Defending Freedom, U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling, and of course, the Attorney General of the United States, the Honorable Jeff Sessions. We're especially honored that Attorney General Sessions is joining us today in Boston to help us celebrate another World Series championship. I know that as an Alabama football fan, he knows a thing or two about celebrating national championships. Roll Tide. But on a more nor are we. But on a more serious note, especially given the heartbreaking and the tragic events that took place this weekend in Pittsburgh, there is no more important time to speak about the right of Americans to practice their religion freely. To begin that discussion, I'd like to introduce Jordan Lawrence, whose organization, the Alliance Defending Freedom, is responsible for numerous victories at the Supreme Court, protecting religious liberty. Jordan Lawrence serves as Senior Counsel and Director of the Strategic Engagement with the Alliance Defending Freedom, where he plays a key role with the Alliance Advancement Team. Lawrence has argued before the U.S. Supreme Court in the precedent-setting Southworth v. Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system in 1999, challenging the university's requirement that forced unwilling students to contribute to campus activist groups. He led the challenge to New York City's ban on private worship services after hours in vacant public school buildings in the long-running Bronx Household of Faith Board of Education of the City of New York case. Lawrence also defended the right of conscience in the Elaine Photography v. Willock at the New Mexico Supreme Court. Lawrence earned a JD from the University of Minnesota Law School and received a BA in journalism from Stanford. Please welcome Jordan Lawrence.
I too want to echo that the horrific act of terrorism at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh 2 days ago emphasizes the importance of today's discussion on the future of religious liberty. We need more people who can publicly urge others to live by the words found in both the Jewish and Christian scriptures, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Our discussion on the future of religious liberty, I think, would be helped by describing three different types of religious liberty cases, and I'm going to illustrate them by using cases that the Alliance Defending Freedom has recently won at the U.S. Supreme Court. First, there are freedom of speech cases. This is when the government either censors or somehow regulates and limits private religious speech. This is an example of this is a case that we recently won at the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court struck down unanimously an ordinance by the town of Gilbert, Arizona, that regulated temporary signs stuck in the ground, depending on what you talked about. If it was political speech, the signs could be bigger than the reach of my arms and could be in the ground for 2 months. If it was a sign temporarily advertising where a religious service was meeting, it had to be much smaller and could only be put up 12 hours before the meeting began. The Supreme Court rightly said that this was an unconstitutional religious-based restriction. Another type of religious liberty issue is of equal access, where religious groups, where the government treats religious groups on the same terms and conditions that it does all other groups. Usually this problem comes because of an erroneous notion that in order for the government to be neutral towards religion, it must treat religion worse than everybody else. And I hope that the Orwellian nature of that is evident, that neutrality is not shown by treating religious groups as second-class citizens. In ADF's win in the Trinity Lutheran case at the Supreme Court, they ruled 7-2 to strike down a Missouri law that excluded only churches from applying for a grant to build playground services made from recycled tires. So religious liberty can be speech cases, they can be equal access cases, they also can be right of conscience exemption cases. Now these are situations where the government imposes a restriction that some adherents to a religious group cannot in good conscience agree to. These examples have existed through history. For example, the Jehovah's Witnesses in World War II, declining to pledge allegiance to the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools, and then were expelled. The Supreme Court protected their right of conscience. Also, during the Vietnam War, when religious pacifists would object to participating in the military draft, federal law exempted them. Now, this leads me to make two observations about the future of religious liberty. I think we're going to see more and more of these right of conscience cases coming because government continues to expand and creates conflicts where none existed before. For example, when Congress recently expanded federal oversight of health care, the Obamacare regulations required businesses to pay for worker benefits that included what many deemed to pay for abortifacient contraceptives. Business owners, like the owners of Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Wood Specialties, there were two cases together, and ADF represented Conestoga Wood Specialties. They're cabinet builders from Pennsylvania. Up until that time, they had had no conflict at all with federal regulation. And they suddenly found themselves facing a dilemma of either obeying this new federal law that would involve them in ending unborn life, in their opinion, or to obey their religious beliefs and be punished by the government. Thankfully, the Supreme Court protected the conscientious rights of the owners in those two cases. The second observation I want to make about religious liberty involves compelled speech. So you can have government censoring speech, but in my opinion, what is even worse is when the government compels speech, when it provokes and orders dissenters to speak the message of the prevailing orthodoxy, whether it's the message of private individuals or the messages of government officials. Last term, the Supreme Court heard 3 cases involving compelled speech. 2 of those were ADF cases that we both won, Masterpiece Cake Shop and Nevola. The third was the Janus case involving mandatory union dues. And there's going to be more of these compelled speech cases coming up. And what I would think the court should do to resolve these is look to the case that came from Boston in 1995, where the Supreme Court in the Hurley case protected the veterans group that organizes the Boston St. Patrick's Day Parade case from government coercion to include the messages the organizers did not support. And this is what the Supreme Court said in that unanimous decision. While the law is free to promote all sorts of conduct in place of harmful behavior, it is not free to interfere with speech for no better reason than promoting an approved message or discouraging a disfavored one, however enlightened either purpose may strike the government. Thank you. And I now want to introduce the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts who will address us, Andrew or Andy Lelling. Before his appointment as U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts, Mr. Lelling was a federal prosecutor for over 15 years, serving first in the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department and later in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia and the District of Massachusetts. And he has quite an amazing record. He was a lead prosecutor in a number of complex fraud, immigration, and international drug trafficking investigations, including most recently the successful prosecution of the largest pyramid schemes ever charged by the Department of Justice, which involved over 1 million victims worldwide and a loss of $3 billion. Before serving as federal prosecutor here, Mr. Lelling was counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, focusing on criminal civil rights enforcement, voting rights enforcement actions, and civil investigations of major city police departments. He is a graduate of Penn Law School in Philadelphia and received his bachelor's degree from Binghamton University. He is also excited about the Redskins, I'm from DC, Red Sox winning the World Series last night, and he promises that the U.S. Attorney's Office will be vigilant to guard against any reinstatement of the curse of the Bambino. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan, for that introduction. I was trying to think of a good joke tying in the Red Sox with religious liberty, but it's tough to do that. Thank you to the Federal Society for hosting this event today. It's a privilege to be here with the Attorney General. His presence marks the importance of this issue on an ongoing basis for the country, and I know it's important to the Attorney General personally. They often call religious liberty the first freedom because it's the first sentence. In fact, it's the first clause of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. It precedes even the right to free speech, and it should do that, right? The right to free speech is merely the right to say what you want to say, but the right to religious liberty is the right to have the values you want to have. As one of the founders put it, a person's allegiance to his or her faith, both in timing and in degree of obligation, comes long before his or her allegiance to the state, to the government under which they live. A free society doesn't force people to choose between one or the other, between their religious values and complying with the law. But over the last few years, there are many who have used the law to do exactly that. And that's what the Attorney General meant when this last July, he said that, quote, "A dangerous movement, undetected by many, is now challenging and eroding our great tradition of religious freedom." In 2012, a baker in Colorado politely refuses to create a wedding cake for a same-sex couple, citing his religious beliefs, his Christian beliefs. He offers to sell them pre-made goods from his store, but he won't lend his artistic expertise to the creation of a cake for a wedding that goes against his deeply held religious views. So the couple sued him. And at a hearing before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, commissioners called this baker despicable and compared his beliefs to those that prompted the Holocaust. No one present, no other commissioner on the board, disavowed those remarks, and neither did any judge sitting on the two appellate courts that reviewed the matter after the finding of the commission against the baker. This past June, the Supreme Court ultimately did the right thing in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, citing the overt hostility of the Colorado Commission to the baker's free exercise of his faith. But what shocked me, and what should give us pause if we're thinking about the future of religious liberty in the United States, was that there was any dissent. Justices Ginsburg and Sotomayor dismissed the bigoted comments of the Colorado commissioners as offhand remarks by one or two members of a larger body, and the justices said nothing about the silence of the other commissioners or the silence of the subsequent courts in the face of this outburst of bigotry by these commission members in a public hearing. One wonders what these justices would have said if the commissioners' discriminatory remarks had not been based on the free exercise of religious liberty, but on race or gender. And yet the Constitution, as far as I know, does not protect any one of these categories less than it protects the others. Similarly, witness the staunch, years-long resistance to allowing religious Americans to avoid having to facilitate payment for someone else's contraception. Last year, at the president's direction, government agencies began implementing an individual moral exemption from the contraception mandate of the Affordable Care Act. I think the laser printer paper had not yet cooled before the state of Massachusetts sued to block the exemption from being implemented in Massachusetts. My office, working with lawyers at the Justice Department in DC, recently won this case in the trial court, preserving the moral exemption for Massachusetts residents, and it's now on appeal. Think about this trend. These conscientious objectors, the baker who doesn't want to make the cake, or the religious institutions or small business owners who don't want to facilitate paying for contraception, they aren't saying that others shouldn't have access to wedding cakes for gay weddings or to contraception. They just don't want to be coerced, and the word is coerced, into participating themselves. But refusal to participate implies a rejection of an underlying liberal dogma, and that is unacceptable, because a dogma it is. The key to understanding what's at stake in these religious liberty debates and how truly scary they are is to remember that liberal secularism is not the absence of a set of beliefs versus a particular religion. It's a competing set of beliefs, one that wants to win, to prevail at the expense of religious faith. I think of all the ink spilled in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, it's Justice Gorsuch who got this point correctly. On the first page of his concurrence, he notes, the state of Colorado chose to support the secular beliefs of other bakers, but not the religious beliefs of this baker at the center of that case. And much of America thinks that that is perfectly fine to do. In my office, when I'm asked what makes a good prosecutor, I say they need to be the best lawyer in the courtroom and that they need to proceed without fear. One of the reasons I have such respect for our Attorney General is that he has those traits. He is fearless in advocating and pursuing the rule of law for all Americans regardless of political stripe and including those of all religious faiths. In October 2017, following direction from the President, the Attorney General issued a lengthy memorandum specifying where and how agencies and departments should be protecting the prerogatives of religious faith. In July 2018, the Attorney General set up a religious liberty task force within the Department of Justice to help implement that guidance, in part by tasking attorney generals like me with implementing the guidance and making sure that it is reflected in our enforcement efforts and in the cases that we bring. In my time as the U.S. Attorney here in Boston, I've been thankful for the Attorney General's leadership in helping us to ensure and promote the rule of law, which is the surest safeguard for all Americans. As I said, it's a privilege to have him here with us today so that he can share with us his thoughts on this important subject. Please join me in welcoming the Attorney General of the United States.
Thanks, Andy. Good. Thank you all. It is great. Please, thank you. It is super to be with you. Andy, thank you for the super leadership you're providing to the United States Attorney's Office. It is one of our most important offices in the country, no doubt about it, here in Boston, and you're involved in so many important cases of national and international significance, and it was great to get briefed today on some of your gang work and anti-fentanyl work. The fentanyl in this region is one reason why
I was hungry, and you did not feed me. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. I was naked, and you did not clothe me. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me.
Thank you for your comments. And
in prison, and you did not visit me. Brother Jeff, as a fellow United Methodist, I call upon you to repent, to care for those in need, to remember that when you do not care for others, you are wounding the body of Christ.
Well, thank you for those remarks and attack, but I will just tell you we do our best every day to fulfill my responsibility to enforce the laws of the United States.
Exercising his free exercise of religion. That is the person who represents the Christian tradition, the faith that everyone here professes to believe in, who is actually sharing with you the words of Jesus himself. The words of Jesus are actually represented in the book of Isaiah.
All right, we thank you for sharing your thoughts.
I thought we were here to protect religious liberty. I am a pastor of a Baptist church, and you are escorting me out for exercising my religious freedom. That doesn't make any sense. I think it's very hypocritical for this group of people to be wanting to protect religious freedom while you are escorting me out for doing that very work.
Well, we would say this. Thank you all and for your comments, and we're glad to hear them, but that's pretty close to what we refer to as the heckler's veto, the ability of one individual to prevent others in a proper forum to be able to express a hopefully coherent thought about a serious subject. I don't think there's anything in the scripture, and I don't believe there's anything in my theology that says a secular nation state cannot have lawful laws to control immigration in its country. And that's what we're talking about. Not immoral, not indecent, and not unkind to state what your laws are and then set about to enforce them, in my view. And I feel like that's my responsibility, and that's what I intend to do. It's great to be back in Boston, my third trip, the cradle of liberty. As some say, the hub of the universe, right here in Boston. Thank you for being here. I know many of you look a little hungover from the ball games. I made it to the 12th inning the other night, but that's as far as I could handle it, and it was an exciting game for sure. So I want to thank particularly the Boston Lawyers Chapter of the Federalist Society for inviting me here to be with you, especially Michael Sullivan, former United States Attorney and former Acting Director of ATF, Jordan Lawrence of ADF. Thank you, Jordan, and the work that your group does. So I've admired and appreciated the Federalist Society's mission from its beginning in 1982. I couldn't say I was present at its creation, but I was watching the United States Attorney appointed by Ronald Reagan in Alabama. I cheered the courage they showed in challenging the activist liberal orthodoxy in the judicial branch, and with not much expectation of change, frankly. We'd all sort of gotten beaten down in the 70s and 80s, it seemed. But I was wrong. I cannot name any other group over the last 35 years, and I've given thought to it, maybe 50 years, that's come close to the policy achievements of the Federalist Society in the areas that they're engaged in. It's been a tremendous, unbelievably successful activity. The jurisprudence of the neutral umpire, as Justice Roberts testified in our committee, is on the ascendancy, and activism and ideology in adjudications is on the defensive intellectually. It's a stunning reversal. And so thanks to the President Trump, there are two more Federalist Society members of the United States Supreme Court. I gotta tell you. Here, and flying up, we were discussing it. There are a number in the White House, and I got to tell you, right here with me, we have a number. Jesse Panuccio, where's Jesse? There he is. Jesse's our acting Associate Attorney General, number 3 in the department. Harvard Law, Federalist Society. Sarah Flores, I don't know where Sarah, there's Sarah right here. Sarah was president of the Harvard Law Federalist Society when she was at Harvard. Rod Rosenstein, our Deputy Attorney General, was a Federalist Society member at Harvard during his time here. Gary Barnett, I mean, he's a Boston University guy. Was at Boston College. Which one did Doug Flutie play at? Oh, the other one? I thought you were at that good place they beat Alabama. I still remember Doug Flutie with the Hail Mary. Is that insensitive? Can I say Hail Mary in this group? Violating some establishment of religion, I guess. But it's an honor to be with you all on this historic Parker House. It's hosted figures like Thoreau, Emerson, Hawthorne, Longfellow, Oliver Wendell Holmes, John Kennedy, and it's where the Boston cream pie was established or invented. But perhaps more relevant to our discussion, it's where John Adams, it's always important to me, I mention it often, it's very significant, defended British soldiers in a jury trial before the American Revolution. Well, that ought to tell us something about how law develops. by chance, I was reading an old textbook, a college textbook on literature, and it was Burke's speech to the Parliament advocating reconciliation with the colonies and not war. And he said, at any rate, I understand. First, he said they were just following the law we taught them. And then he said, I understand they sell more copies of Blackstone's commentaries in the colonies than the mother country. That's just how law develops over centuries. And we're heirs to that we are heirs to such a system that's protected our safety, prosperity, and liberty for so long should fill us with awe and energize our determination to preserve, protect, and enhance it.
So Jeff Sessions in Boston talking religious liberties. We're actually just getting word now that Rod Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General, is speaking about hate crimes, and he's expected to mention Pittsburgh. Let's jump right over to that feed.
To practice a minority religion is a matter of right and not an indulgence from the majority. Washington wrote as follows: "For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens." Washington expressed his hope that all people who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. The metaphor Washington used is from the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. It reflects one of the fundamental goals of government, to protect the safety of the people served by the government. This roundtable unites two of the Department of Justice's highest priorities, supporting our state and local law enforcement agencies and vigorously prosecuting bias-motivated crimes. Vigilant enforcement of the laws helps to deter violations. Prosecuting criminals is the most salient aspect of law enforcement, but we must always remain focused on the primary goal, to prevent crime from happening. Our true measure of success is the crimes that do not happen. I want to begin by thanking the law enforcement officers who are on the front lines in confronting criminals. Every day you risk your own safety to protect others. In Pittsburgh, we saw yet another dramatic example of officers who ran straight into the line of fire to protect their fellow citizens. Every day, America's brave law enforcement officers demonstrate sacrifices like that. For this, you have the utmost respect and gratitude of the President, the Department of Justice, and the entire nation. Thanks to you, the vile forces of bigotry and hatred will not ever prevail in America. Today, our distinguished speakers will discuss the best methods to track and prosecute hate crimes, but the advice will not come only from the designated speakers. We convene this session as a roundtable rather than a series of lectures, because the best strategies usually emerge from discussions among colleagues with experience on the front lines. We hope to foster relationships that will allow you to partner with the department to stop hate crimes in your community, and thereby together to make all of our communities more safe. Hate crimes obviously are not a recent development. On this day in 1869, Ku Klux Klan members broke into the home of Abram Colby, a former slave and one of the first African-American members of the Georgia legislature. Frustrated that Colby would not accept bribes, nor would he cave to threats, the Klansmen took him to the woods and whipped him for hours, leaving him for dead. He did not die. He went on to testify in Congress about the incident. 20 years ago, on October 7th of 1998, two perpetrators drove a young man named Matthew Shepard to a remote area where they beat him, robbed him, and tied him to a fence post outside Laramie, Wyoming. They killed Shepard because he was gay. Last Friday, he was interred at the National Cathedral. I'm grateful to Matthew's parents for joining us today to discuss their important work to prevent hate crimes. I had the opportunity to speak with them just recently before I came to speak with you. And I'm very grateful to them for their work, which stands as a living memorial to their son. A few months before Mr. Shepard's death, white supremacists in Jasper, Texas, killed an African-American man named James Byrd Jr. for no reason other than the color of his skin. Outrage about those deaths of Mr. Shepard and Mr. Byrd inspired the passage of the Shepard-Byrd Hate Crime Prevention Act. Yesterday marked the 9th anniversary of the passage of that legislation, and today we celebrate Congress's historic decision. Since January 2017, the Department of Justice has prosecuted more than 50 defendants for hate crimes. Many of those cases were filed under the Shepard-Byrd Act. For example, last year the department brought the first prosecution under the Shepard-Byrd Act for the murder of Mercedes Williamson, who was targeted because of gender. The defendant pleaded guilty in federal court in Mississippi and received a sentence of 49 years in prison. In another matter, the Attorney General sent a federal hate crimes prosecutor to help Iowa state prosecutors try 2 men for the murder of Kadari Johnson, a high school student also attacked because of gender. That case resulted in convictions of both defendants in 2 separate trials. In August of this year, a defendant was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to federal hate crimes and firearms charges for shooting 3 men in a bar in Kansas. The defendant shot and killed an Indian engineer named Srinivas Kochabatla and attempted to kill an Indian co-worker and a 3rd man who intervened to try to provide assistance. That crime also was motivated by bias. America's founders believed so strongly in freedom of religion that they enshrined its protection in the Bill of Rights in 1791, 1 year after President Washington wrote to the congregation in Rhode Island. As Attorney General Sessions remarked at this summer's Religious Liberty Summit at the Justice Department, our founders gave religious expression a double protection in the First Amendment. Not only do we possess freedom to exercise our beliefs, but we also possess freedom of speech. The department prosecutes people who interfere with those fundamental rights. Last summer, a federal jury convicted a defendant on charges related to the 2017 burning of a mosque in Victoria, Texas. Witnesses testified about the defendant's gleeful reaction to seeing a house of worship burn and about his use of religious slurs. The federal complaint filed in Pittsburgh on Saturday alleges 29 violations of federal law, including prohibitions against hate crimes. The complaint alleges that the defendant murdered 11 victims and attempted to murder 6 others. Most of those victims were killed in the course of exercising their religious beliefs, people who posed no threat, no danger to the suspect. He also wounded law enforcement officers who were seeking only to protect the other victims. Earlier this month, Congress, with the support of the administration, enacted legislation that strengthens another federal hate crime law and further protects religious freedom. That law, known as the Church Arson Prevention Act, protects the rights of individuals at all houses of worship, not just churches, to exercise their religious beliefs free from threats and force. The recent amendment widens the law's application to include other types of religious property and to punish people who seek to interfere with religious freedom. In addition to protecting traditional houses of worship, the amended act now protects religious schools, hospitals, and similar institutions. And our department's commitment to combat hate crimes extends beyond prosecutions. Soon after his confirmation, Attorney General Sessions created a hate crimes subcommittee as part of his task force on violent crime reduction pursuant to the President's executive order. The department has transformed that subcommittee into a freestanding hate crimes enforcement and prevention initiative led by our Civil Rights Division under John Gore's leadership. The new initiative coordinates the department's efforts to eradicate hate crimes, and it facilitates outreach to law enforcement agencies and to the public. This roundtable is actually part of that ongoing initiative. And today, the Department of Justice is announcing the launch of a hate crimes website, a one-stop portal with information about all of our resources concerning hate crimes. Law enforcement officers, prosecutors, members of the public can readily find information on our website about resources to prevent and prosecute hate crimes. I encourage you to use that portal and provide feedback to us so that we can make it an even better resource in the future. The initiative also is taking on the challenging task of addressing the reporting. I spoke with the Shepherds about this, and I think they'll be talking with you about that shortly during their panel presentation. According to the latest FBI uniform crime reports, 88% of agencies that report hate crime data to the FBI reported 0 hate crimes in 2016. We are reviewing the accuracy of those reports. We need to improve the collection and reporting of data. And moreover, simply reporting hate crimes does not mean, simply not reporting hate crimes does not mean they aren't happening. We need your help to help us understand the reasons why victims don't report hate crimes. We also need to understand the barriers that law enforcement officers and agencies face in reporting hate crimes to the FBI. Together, we can find ways to improve reporting of hate crimes, and that will allow us to more effectively target our resources to the places where they're most needed. To achieve that goal, the National Institute of Justice will grant the University of New Hampshire approximately $840,000 to conduct a national survey of hate crime incidents and victimization. That study will yield detailed data about hate crimes, analyze local policies that affect hate crime reporting, and identify successful investigation and prosecution strategies. It will survey 3,000 law enforcement agencies to collect information about rates of reporting hate crimes. A follow-up survey will ask 250 prosecutors about incidents that result in arrest, and through that initiative, we hope to gather further information that will improve our data collection in the future. I'm also pleased that the important work you're undertaking will be supported. In March, the Attorney General announced a $10 million technical assistance program known as the Collaborative Reform Technical Assistance Center, a partnership with the International Association of Chiefs of Police and 8 leading law enforcement, leadership, and labor organizations. And that partnership will now include the prosecution and prevention of hate crimes. For the first time, law enforcement will be able to assess critical and innovative education and training resources on hate crime investigations and prosecutions. And that effort will be led by the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, which includes many professionals who work with state and local partners throughout the country to combat crimes that involve bias and violations of civil rights. Before I conclude, I want to thank the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services and the Community Relations Service for making this roundtable and our new website possible. These things don't happen on their own. They require a lot of work by many people working behind the scenes. Our department is taking many steps to combat hate crimes, but it is the brave men and women on the front lines of our local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies who are most important to this battle. We depend on you to implement President Washington's vision of a nation that gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, and requires only that people who live under its protection demean themselves as good citizens. So let us move forward with a renewed commitment to the principle that every American should enjoy equal protection of the laws and should be free to live and worship in safety. I thank you for your service to your communities and to your country. Thank you very much.
Well, a heartfelt thank you to our
Matthews. This is video we have of the
area there this morning. Just moments after lockdown was lifted at the school, some students started streaming from their phones as well. That initial call coming in about the shooting just around 7:15 this morning. Moments later, parents showed up to the school horrified, not knowing if their child was okay or not. From Sky Fox, you can see the scene from above as police cars still line the school about 5 hours after the shooting. Right now, a suspect is in custody. We've got live team coverage for you this afternoon. Fox 46, my co-anchor Jason Harper joining us live now from Butler High School. Jason, as I would imagine, parents and students there are still in shock a lot. I would think, as so many people that you talked to this morning, we saw just that.
Yeah, it certainly is, Paige. Good afternoon. And yeah, just because this happened hours ago doesn't mean the emotions have stopped whatsoever. For a lot of parents, they're still walking on campus as we speak, picking up their kids. And the first time that connection is made when they see their kids, knowing that they're safe, not just safe, but actually holding them and knowing that they're in their own arms, it's an emotion that unless you're a parent and have gone through it, it's hard to describe. And that's happening even hours later after what took place today. Yes, still a very active scene. You can see here behind me, we're at the entrance. Cars still coming in. The only cars coming through are those parents that are still trying to connect with their kids and take them home. The school officials have allowed the students to go home if they so choose. It has been a chaotic morning, just to say the least. And my goodness, we had a chance to talk to so many parents and students as they're leaving, some even literally going through the windows, trying to get out of the school for fear of what could happen. And we had a chance to talk and stop some of those students. And here's what one had to say earlier. This is Matthew Horton, who's a 9th grader, and just stopped his grandmother picking him up to take him home right now. And Matthew, thanks for stopping for just a second. And I know this has been just a blurring morning of what all has happened. Take me back to the moment you first heard, saw something, knew something wasn't normal. What was that moment like for you?
I was walking back from the media center, going to the 500 hallway where my math class is, where I see like tons of kids running to class, and I thought they were just joking around and stuff, but once I see security guards waving their hands around and teachers saying, "Get in the classroom right now, lockdown immediately," I ran to my class, and that's where, like 10 minutes later, I heard police saying, get on the ground right now."
When you know that it's not a drill, you know, and you've heard this happening at other schools, and you think it's not going to happen at your own school, when you realize it's happening to you in that moment, what was going through your mind?
I was just like very, very nervous at the situation, and I was like, what's going on? Why did this happen? Why did he bring a gun to school?
Just unbelievable. I mean, that's the biggest thing from the students' perspective is they first thought it was drill, they thought it was a prank, and then everyone's running in every direction. You get locked down into a classroom. You're told to remain quiet until you're allowed to get out. I mean, just trying to process that as a 9th grader, even to a 12th grader, it's hard to comprehend. One of the students we spoke to earlier, as I mentioned, he and 5 other students going out of a window just because they felt like they were trapped. They had to get away. The parents, though, it's a whole nother level as far as until you can see your kid, the emotion of, oh my gosh, they texted me, I want to see them, and them just trying to get to school as quickly as they can. We had a chance to talk with some of those parents. Here's what they had to say. All right, guys, we're here at Elevation Church. We got parents of a 9th grader here, and what can you tell us right now? What are you guys being told?
We're being told to drive to the school. They're going to ask for your ID, and they'll bring your kid out to you.
What has the last 30 minutes to an hour been like for you guys?
Crazy, not knowing what's going on.
Have you been able to be in contact with your child at all?
Yes.
He texts us. Okay, so at least you know that
he's okay. They're safe.
So right now they're telling you guys to go to the school and you can pick them up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I mean, I just met those people this morning. Within 5 minutes, they were offering to give me a ride. Traffic was such a gridlock between Elevation Church trying to cross Independence, Highway 74 there to get to school. They said, hey, you want to ride with us to the school? I hopped in with them. I rode with them. Trying to get here was almost impossible. And they were hearing mixed directions from students and from elsewhere about trying to get to school. So being able to catch that ride was certainly helpful. Everyone really was working together, and the communication with the school, actually, from a parent's perspective, was pretty good this morning, and I know a lot of parents are thankful for that. We've had team coverage out here all morning long. Robin Kennedy has been out here this morning as well, is still here now. She's been able to talk with a lot of folks about what this has meant to them. Robin, what are you finding out this morning?
Oh, it was just terrifying for parents having to experience that and not knowing earlier this morning, Jason. Now, right now, things seem to have calmed down just a bit. We do have police off to my right, and we just saw some officers walking out. Appeared that they were coming from the direction of the school. They were on foot, and then we have those cars that have been posted up for quite a while. And then the school is right here back behind me. There are some cars parked in the parking lot there. Some student drivers were told that they were told just to leave their cars there in this location back behind me. And you see that there is a parking lot there, and there are lots of cars inside that. Now, I had a chance to talk with a parent who was very emotional. He was able to text back and forth with his son, and he talked about finally being reunited with him, laying eyes on him and giving him a big hug.
You know, what can I do as a parent? What can I do? I can't do anything other than rush up here. You know, I couldn't do anything more, and not knowing what's going on and not knowing what's true information and what's misinformation, it's really rough. But being that I was able to communicate with him, he's telling me that he's in the classroom, it's locked down. He's getting instructions on what to do, which is pretty much stay in place. That alone was helpful to me to know that he was safe, and that whatever was going on at the school, he was away from that point. So, you know, that was good to know. But it's heart-wrenching not being able to get my hand on my son and being able to pull him out of the tough situation that he might be in.
Wow, just really tough for parents. And we also had a chance to speak with students. We saw some of them coming out just as they had found out that their fellow student had passed away in that shooting, and they were very emotional. Take a listen to what one of the students told me.
He's actually a really calm guy. He's really easy to get along with. He's one of those people that just kind of doesn't care. It's just like, oh, you believe in this? Well, okay, cool. Well, I believe in this, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, he was one of those kind of calmer people that didn't really care what other people thought.
Yeah, there she's describing the victim, and just such a tragic story, Jason. We've been out here, we've heard these parents, these students, and throughout the day, just the emotions running so high. First panic, and then finding out that one of their fellow students died in this shooting. It is just heartbreaking.
It certainly is. Robin, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Listen, no one ever wants this to happen in their backyard, at their school, or their neighborhood, and we're in the middle of all that here in Matthews. Lindsay Klein is actually at Matthews Police Headquarters there with the latest on the suspect. Lindsay, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Jason. We are live outside Matthews Police Department where the suspect was taken, and they are continuing to investigate the situation, the shooting at Butler High School down the road. And we're told the suspect would have been taken here to be processed before they're taken to the Mecklenburg County Jail. They said processing could take anywhere from a few hours to a whole day, so we don't know exactly how long it will take in this situation, but that's all we're really being told right now. They're being pretty tight-lipped here at the police department because this does involve high school students, but we will of course bring you updates and the name of that suspect as soon as we get it. Reporting live in Matthews, Lindsay Klein, Fox 46 Charlotte.
All right, Lindsay, thank you. And Matthews Police earlier today had a press conference saying that they thought that they were able to manage and contain the situation as quickly as possible. Here's a word from the press conference.
Shortly after 7 a.m. this morning, about 7:10 a.m., our school resource officer called in that there was a shot fired in the school and that he had a victim of a gunshot wound, a student that was shot. There were several officers immediately in the area and responded. After a short time, we were able to determine that the suspect, who is also a high school student, was in custody by the school resource officer. We were able to get the victim out of the school, and he was transported by medic to CMC, to Carolina's Healthcare Uptown. And we can announce at this time, unfortunately, he did succumb to that wound, and he has passed on. So it's been an extremely tragic event for us here in Matthews.
And certainly the emotion continues, even though that took place hours ago. Still live out here in front of Butler High School as parents continue to pick up their kids right now. We even heard words from Clayton Wilcox, the superintendent of CMS schools, early today, where he said this was a fail. This was a fail in not being able to intervene with potential bullying from the suspect maybe days or weeks or months ago. We'll certainly hear more from both the superintendent and those folks here in school, and our thoughts and prayers to the family of the high schooler and the rest of the kids here that are certainly going through an emotional time. Here live from Butler High School, Jason Harper with Fox 46. Paige, I'm going to send it back to you.
Jason, thank you so much. We do have a statement here from CMS as well. We're going to read you what they put out here. Our hearts are with the family, loved one, friends, and everyone affected by the tragedy which occurred this morning at Butler High School. Counseling is available to any student or staff who wishes to speak to someone. The Butler High School community and CMS appreciates the support of the entire community during this difficult time. CMS will provide updates throughout today as warranted. We do have new video as well, this taken from inside the hallway at Butler High School from a student's phone, I believe, that was sent to us in. And folks, we will have updates for you throughout the day on fox46charlotte.com. We will have another update for you at 3:30 this afternoon with a press conference then. We'll see you tonight for news at 5, 6, and 10. I'll see you tomorrow morning on Good Day Charlotte.
So that is the latest on that shooting at Butler High School this morning. That's from our sister station in Charlotte, Fox 46, and really they were able to compile the best video, so it was the best way to kind of summarize what happened there this morning, and it's really unfortunate that student did die after that fight and that shooting. So more details, like she mentioned, at the 3:30 press conference later this afternoon. Now shooting up to Boston, where Attorney General Jeff Sessions is still finishing up his remarks on religious liberty, taking question and answer. If you saw earlier, there was a little bit of a protest with a Methodist priest in the room who was escorted out by police just a few moments ago in the last hour. Again, the Methodist Church had some sort of suit brought against Attorney General Jeff Sessions about the migrant children being held at the border. So that's what that was all about. But now he's sitting down for a Q&A. As always, stay with us for live video here, guys. We are expecting the first court appearance for the suspect of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting in court coming up this afternoon. So stay with us for that. If we get any glimpse of that coming in on our live stream, our video, we'll bring that to you live from our newsroom here in Washington.
Of a right of conscience being asserted in a situation, and what steps have you been taking to make sure that there's more sensitivity to people asserting religious liberty claims in the face of some government requirement?
Well, the first thing that we need is that the federal government not suppress or violate free expression of religious faith. So that's one of the primary things that this task force does. We've got large numbers of cabinet agencies, sub-cabinet agencies, ABC agencies that think they're independent and uncontrolled by anybody, and they have legal counsel, and there are a lot of opinions out there that have led people to believe that certain things cannot be done legally when they can be done if you carefully understand the opinions of the Supreme Court and read the Constitution carefully. So we want to be sure, and one of our primary goals in this task force is to make sure the federal government is on the right side of this issue, that understands fully free expression and protects it.
And do you think that, and you mentioned this somewhat in your speech, but that not everyone in the United States is Christian? There's Hindus and Sikhs, Muslims, etc. And how is this how is this accommodation and this sensitivity being done across the board for all religious faiths?
Well, we protect all religious faiths, and that's exactly what the Constitution contemplates and has since our founding. And so we've gotten really strong support, I believe, from virtually every religious group for the guidance that we've given, because it protects different religions from state domination.
Well, and you were also talking about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and I have found that sometimes people mistake it as an automatic get out of jail free card if somebody asserts a religious belief, and it doesn't operate that way, as you mentioned in your speech. I think if that were true, everyone would belong to the church that doesn't believe in paying taxes. But federal law protects, we don't have a military draft right now, but it's still in the books, protects religious objectors to the military. But how does this balance out when, so it is selective, is that sometimes the religious believer will win and sometimes they won't when faced with a contrary governmental interest, and how does that all balance out?
Well, that's tough sometimes to balance it out, as
Right.
you well know. Where do you draw the line? Justice Scalia wasn't happy with payout, whatever.
Right.
You know, you can't have cocaine as part of your religious activities and expect the state to approve it. So there are lines on which you can't cross, but reasonable respect for people's beliefs is important. It's a clear and understandable view that Christians may conclude that killing another person, even in war, is unjustifiable. Right. So we've created mechanisms, for the most part, that allows people who have a sincere religious belief, not just a philosophical belief, but a religious belief, transcendent belief, that certain activities are wrong. Can't we accommodate that? Well, they figured that out, I think it's World War I, if not before, and people became medics, so they did other things other than actually seeking to kill a fellow human being. So we respect that, and I think that's sort of the approach we should take. We don't. Why can't we do that with a baker? Why can't we do that with the nuns?
Exactly.
Yes, we can do it, well within our ability to do so, and we should respect them enough to make that accommodation.
Now, the objection that comes the opposite way from what you just said is that is giving some sort of improper preference to the religious believers. And what do you say to that?
Well, the first line of the First Amendment, as you noted, or Andy did, that it says you're allowed to freely exercise your religion. Doesn't mean that you have to keep everything you do secret. Action is a part of every faith system I'm aware of. You're exposed to do things and not do things. It's not too popular today to tell somebody they can't do something, they shouldn't do something, something's wrong. But most faiths, I believe there is a right and a wrong. There is a truth, an objective truth that we can ascertain. And I would just say parenthetically, we got a Supreme Court justice who gave a speech half a dozen times that said, quoted another professor favorably, that there is no objectivity, just a series of perspectives. Well, this is a difficult thing for me to conceive how in our system that you don't seek the truth. And so we respect people that seek the truth. We don't always agree on what the truth is, but we respect this mechanism. And I think that protecting the rule of law means that we protect the right of people to pursue truth as if it's part of their religious faith, as much as we can, and accommodate them in doing so.
And I just think in a civil society, that is the way we show inherent respect to all individuals, that as much as possible we try to protect both what they believe, what they say about it, and how they exercise their faith.
Amen.
So with the growth of government, there are many federal programs that help the homeless, help victims of storms, etc., and that it creates a situation where religious groups who are motivated to help those in need are partnering with the federal government. And you talked about this a bit. So it's not only funding, but just participation. And does the memorandum and your other initiatives deal with this type of thing to help facilitate this kind of cooperation to help people in need?
You mean to partner more with religious institutions?
As opposed to, right, excluding them because of some establishment clause concern or something like that?
Yes, we would like to see as much of that as possible. There could be some legitimate constitutional concerns if carried too far. But yes, we strongly would like to see that be carried out where appropriate.
Well, good. Well, thank you for coming here today, and we so appreciate you coming and speaking to us about the important issue of religious liberty, and that everyone has the right to assert what they say without undue government interference. Thank you very much, General.
Thank you. Good.
That's it. Thanks, everybody. Please feel free to sign up on your way out for our email list, and thank you so much for coming out.
There's coffee on the table, by the way.
Yeah. There's coffee on the table. Yep.
Community has lost that trust, but there are many who have. And I'm inviting you all to readdress that issue so everyone feels like they belong, like they're part of moving forward, they're part of our country, our great country, and we can take that message internationally to include everyone in the progress of embracing one another as friends and family. Again, I want to thank you for the honor of being here today to be a part of this august collaboration. The invitation was really amazing. Again, thank you to the Deputy Attorney General for his remarks and everyone that you will meet today. It was really brilliant to be here. Thank you so much.
Please don't stop the music, Please don't stop the music, Please don't stop the music, Please don't stop the music,
Prosecutors say they will be seeking the death penalty against the man suspected of Saturday's deadly synagogue shooting.
Words of hate are unwelcome in Pittsburgh.
A heartbroken community in Pittsburgh coming together Sunday night to remember the 11 worshipers gunned down during weekend services at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Barry Werber survived the massacre, hiding in a storage closet with the rabbi and a few other congregants, including 88-year-old Mel Wax, who was fatally shot when he opened the door to see if the shooting stopped. Werber says the accused gunman, Robert Bowers, then entered their hiding spot.
He didn't see us, thank God. I could see that he looked around only because there was a shaft of light as he opened the door. He stepped over Mel's body, didn't pay any attention, stepped back, and walked out.
46-year-old Bowers terrorized worshipers using an assault rifle and 3 handguns, killing 8 men and 3 women and injuring 6 others. Prior to the shooting, Bowers made anti-Semitic comments on social media, and afterward, while receiving medical treatment, he allegedly told an officer he wanted, quote, all Jews to die.
I don't know where he learned that the Jews were responsible for all the ills in the world, but he's not the first and he won't be the last. And unfortunately, that I hate to say it in this context, but that's our cross to bear.
Bowers legally owned and was licensed to carry the guns he allegedly used during the shooting. He is expected to appear in court later today. In Pittsburgh, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Heartfelt vigils in Pittsburgh on Sunday for victims of the deadly shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. 11 people were killed, 6 others wounded, including 4 responding officers. Many foreign countries are sending their support to the Jewish community there. In Jerusalem, projections showed the Israeli and American flags as one entity, reading, "We're with you, Pittsburgh." The Israeli cabinet began its weekly meeting with a moment of silence for the shooting victims.
We must stand and fight back against all these barbaric fronts, against this zealous, brutal anti-Semitism.
At the Vatican, Pope Francis denounced what he called an inhuman act of violence. The pontiff led followers in prayers for Pittsburgh, calling for an end to the flames of hatred.
May the Lord help us to extinguish the breeding grounds of hatred that grow in our societies, strengthening the sense of humanity, the respect for life.
In France, which has seen its own recent anti-Semitic attacks, people lit candles beneath makeshift signs bearing the victims' names and ages.
We believe that when American Jews, when French Jews are targeted because they are Jews, it's a matter for all the citizens.
British Prime Minister Theresa May was one of the first foreign leaders to respond, writing on Twitter, "Our thoughts are with the Jewish community in Pittsburgh and all those affected by this sickening and cowardly act." Jane Metzler, Fox News.
No matter the corner of Pittsburgh, the city's 300,000 people share 2 things in common: black and gold. Let's go! Those colors carrying the Steel City through ups and downs, including Saturday's mass shooting that left 11 dead and 6 injured at a synagogue.
We are a family. That was never exemplified more than today in the aftermath of this tragedy in Squirrel Hill.
Pittsburghers sought refuge from the weekend's tragedy at Sunday's Steelers game, determined to send a message larger than beat the Browns.
Pittsburgh's strong, and we're going to come together as a family, and nothing's going to stop us.
I think it's not, about our differences now. It's really about, how we're all the same.
And that feeling of unity and love spilled over from the stands onto the field, with players also offering their condolences to families of the victims. A hush fell over Heinz Field Sunday in a moment of silence commemorating the lives lost. Steelers president Art Rooney released a statement saying, in part, "Our hearts are heavy, but we must stand against anti-Semitism and hate crimes of any nature and come together to preserve our values and our community." Professional athletes boasting the black and gold echoed these sentiments on Twitter, many sharing the Steelers' altered logo featuring the Star of David as a gesture of support for the Jewish community. In Pittsburgh, Emily Ikeda, Fox News.
And as we continue to talk about the Pittsburgh shooting and the suspect who is due in court later this afternoon, no sight of that yet on the video coming into our newsroom right now. But in the bottom right corner of your screen, you see a shot right here, a podium shot of what is in Pittsburgh. The U.S. attorney there, Scott Brady, is expected to make some remarks on the shooting from Saturday. This just popped up in our stream. Weren't expecting it, so we're going to see what this brings. But again, the U.S. attorney there in Western Pennsylvania to make remarks on this shooting. That's coming up next, and any other feed that we have coming in of the suspect, we'll make sure we bring that to you as well.
I got the test they need, 1, 2, 3, and we're just checking in with the network. So, anybody need a white? Anybody need a level test? 1, 2, 1, 2. We all good? Tom, you good?
Yeah, I see it.
Hi guys, I'm FBI Public Affairs Catherine Palachicchio. This is your 1-minute warning. It will be U.S. Attorney Scott Brady who's going to be speaking.
As we mentioned, this is U.S. Attorney. This is about to be U.S. Attorney Scott Brady in Pittsburgh. He's U.S. Attorney in Western Pennsylvania. And the latest that we heard is that he is seeking the death penalty for the suspect in the Pittsburgh shooting spree from Saturday. So we're going to hear from him in just about 1 minute.
Good afternoon.
On Saturday, October 27th, 2018, my office charged Robert Bowers with federal murder and assault charges relative to the horrific acts of violence he committed at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Today, Robert Bowers made his first appearance in federal court. The judge advised him of the charges against him. He is detained in jail without bond. The federal magistrate judge scheduled a hearing for Thursday, November 1st at 10 a.m. At that time, we will have the opportunity to present evidence demonstrating that Robert Bowers murdered 11 people who were exercising their religious beliefs, and that he shot or injured 6 others, including 4 of whom were police officers responding to the shooting. Our investigation of these hate crimes continues. Under the law, we must present this case to a federal grand jury within 30 days of today. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the victims' families and with the community. And rest assured, we have a team of prosecutors working hard to ensure that justice is done. Thank you.
Mr. Brady, why was it important to file capital charges?
All right, guys, do me one favor. Slide.
What private philanthropy can do is give you examples and show what works. And then cities and states and the federal government have to scale things up where they have the power of taxing to address the problems on a large scale. But if you want to know what works, that's what we're trying to do to help them. Now, even though mayors are leading the way on climate change, that doesn't mean we can afford to ignore what is happening in Washington, and that's the last thing I wanted to talk about. Unfortunately, I think things are going from bad to worse, and all of the partisan nastiness is really tearing this country apart. This last week, we saw someone that tried to bomb and kill Americans because of their political beliefs, and yet, rather than unite the country, unfortunately, the White House attacked news outlets that criticized the president and suggested that they were to blame for the violence instead. Mayors understand that bomb threats are not opportunities to launch political attacks, and what we need to do is to elect people to Washington who understand that as well, and it will start restoring civility to our politics and trying to unite our country again. Just go back and read history, and unfortunately, I think too many of our schools have stopped teaching history, but if you go back and read what happened in the 30s, you really start to worry about the direction that we are going. In America, political opponents are not mortal enemies. They are fellow citizens, fellow Americans, and we've just got to remember that. And however this election in 8 days turns out, I think we need our leaders to stop treating opponents like enemies and start remembering the fact that we are all citizens of this country. It is still the greatest country in the world. We love it. The opportunity is here. People, when they vote with their feet, still come here. But words have actions, and when you go and criticize and foment unrest, unfortunately you see things like Pittsburgh and like the bombs. We've seen in Minneapolis and St. Paul that leadership can work if they do it right and make progress, and I believe that we will. So I now want to again thank Jacob Fry and Melvin Carter for everything they've done here in Minnesota. I got a good chance to talk to them on plane on the way over. Congratulations to all of the winning cities, and you're going to hear from both of them. Jacob talked about a quick speech. His idea of quick was an hour and a half or something like that. And then Marvin said, well, I've got to beat him after all. So I'm going to go inside, have a cup of coffee. No, I'm not. Jacob? Oh. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Well, Mike, enjoy your cup of coffee or hot chocolate, and Mayor Carter and I will see you in about 90 minutes or so. So get comfortable. So we started out this weekend on an incredibly depressing and sad note following the tragic shooting in Pittsburgh. And you start to think as a mayor, how are you going to respond in more than just rhetoric and words. And then we went to City Lab in Detroit, and it was inspiring. And it was this collective acknowledgement that regardless of what's happening at the federal level, this lack of compassion and love and vision and clear action, we in cities can be a beacon of hope and opportunity and inclusivity. We can be an example for the rest of the country to follow. And you see that clear action coming out of mayors, of state legislatures, of city councils. And by the way, thank you all of our fellow electeds for being here with us today. And right now, that clear lack of leadership on some of the most important issues that are facing our country, it requires some very clear action. And that action is especially necessary in the area of climate change. So people are calling right now for cities to step up and lead, and we are most definitely going to answer that call. And so Minneapolis, we've set very ambitious goals in the area of climate change, wanting to bring our entire city enterprise to 100% renewable by 2022, and our entire city to 100% renewable by 2030. Now those targets are ambitious, but they are doable. And in order to get there, you do need the additional assistance. We have policies set up right now that enable us to reach some of these goals. We have some solar incentives that are some of the best in the country, and we're putting our entire weight behind community solar gardens, which cut down on carbon emissions while reducing energy costs. Our Green Business Cost Share program is nation leading right now. What we did was we tied pollution to fees. So for every pound of pollution you emit into the atmosphere, you're now charged a fee. And in 1 year alone, we reduced carbon output by 6 million pounds. We reduced criteria pollutants by 18,000 pounds. And all of that money then can go to assist businesses in finding more sustainable measures that work for the long haul. So, we've taken some really great steps towards meeting our goals, and Bloomberg Philanthropies is really going to help put us over the top. They're going to help us to expedite some of the policies that we have in place and create new ones so that we're able to reach the goals that they're set. And what they're giving us is the human capacity and the technical expertise we need to accelerate and improve upon our efforts to reach and beat our climate action goals of 80% reduction of carbon emissions in Minneapolis by 2050, to reach and beat those goals. So in a way, it's kind of the SWAT team that's able to come in, help us expedite the process, meet the goals, and in the process become a far more sustainable city. And so their help to facilitate these efforts make Minneapolis a city at the cutting edge of the 21st century, public transit options that also cut down on carbon emissions. I also want to emphasize the value that we're able to do this hand in hand, side by side with St. Paul and Mayor Carter. We know that Minneapolis does not operate in a vacuum. We operate in a regional economy. And when you have partners from just across the river, or in my case on the same side of the river as the mayor here, you're able to make it so that 2 and 2 does not equal 4, it actually equals 5. So we're making some great progress, and I'm very hopeful that that progress will continue. Mike Bloomberg, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate this opportunity. The purpose of being here today is that Minneapolis and St. Paul are now Bloomberg American Climate Challenge cities. And that deserves a round of applause, please. This is a status and the assistance that we are so excited about. A huge thank you to all of our city staff, again, our council members, our other elected officials. Michael, thank you so much. And Mayor Carter, I look forward to continue partnering with you on this as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Welcome. Mike. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I have always felt like when people are waiting to eat, that's the worst time to speak and the best time to be brief. I think we're setting a new one here, and that's when folks have been standing out in the cold. And so I'll be as brief as possible. I'm excited. I'm really appreciative. This is an incredible opportunity. Mayor Bloomberg, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for your leadership and your passion. You know, right now in America, it's an incredible time, and it's a pivotal time on so many different issues, with particular regard to climate change. As we've seen our federal government say, we're going to withdraw ourselves from the Paris Agreement, but we all know that the impacts of climate change are hurting our communities, they're impacting our cities, and they cannot go unanswered. And to be a part of cities all across our country, and really cities all across the world, who are saying we can take action on the local level, that we can take action in our neighborhoods, we can take action in our cities to do something about this is really helpful. Minneapolis and St. Paul have long been in relationship with each other. Mayor Fry calls it, what's the word, cooperation. The long-standing cooperation between St. Paul and Minneapolis. I'm excited to apply that cooperation towards meeting our climate goals, and I'm definitely excited for us to enter into that same type of challenge with cities across our community. I want to point out our Councilmember Chris Tolbert, who's here, an incredible champion for us. Councilmember Jane Prince, who's here, an incredible champion for us. When we came into office earlier this year, we identified three things that we said are our core values of our administration. We're building a city that works for all of us, and so the first core value had to be equity. The second one was innovation, to say let's constantly think and rethink how we do the work that we do, so that we know we're not just repeating the same processes of last year, but that we're meeting today and tomorrow's needs. But the third is resilience. And resilience has got to be a critical goal for all of us, because as we talk about building our future, the first thing we have to do is secure our future. So I also want to point out Russ Stark, our Chief Resilience Officer for the City of St. Paul. Thank you for your work here, who's also been very instrumental in leading our work to this. Today, Bloomberg Philanthropies announced St. Paul and Minneapolis as winning cities in the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Challenge. This challenge is an incredible opportunity for us to work together with each other, to work together with cities across the country. I want to say thank you for your leadership across the globe in ensuring that cities across our nation, and in particular mayors across our nation, have the support and resources that they need to really accelerate our shared efforts to tackle climate change and promote a sustainable future for everyone. In St. Paul, our city is growing and changing, and we are continuing to build our 21st century global city. As we continue to move forward, one of the most vital responsibilities we have is ensuring that we're meeting the challenges of today and preparing ourselves for the future. The harmful impacts of climate change requires that we make every effort and take every action we can to ensure we're building sustainable futures for our cities. That's why we stepped forward to participate in this, and that's why we're so excited to be one of the cities chosen. St. Paul plans to use this support to further prepare for the impact of climate change through measurable carbon reductions, and Bloomberg Philanthropies will work with our city to achieve the following actions by 2020. We're planning on building out 35 mobility hubs to offer more low-carbon options and electric vehicle charging, eventually bringing 90% of residents within 10 minutes of 4 to 5 human-powered electric or low-carbon mobility options. We're planning to achieve greater carbon reduction through retrofits and tune-ups in our municipal buildings. That's critical because we know that so much of the emissions that we have in our country come from buildings in cities, and we're planning to develop our solar workforce training and development programs in conjunction with increasing solar installation opportunities. Mayor Bloomberg, Mayor Fry, thank you so much. Mayor Bloomberg, I know I speak on behalf of Mayor Fry and I when I say you're always welcome to join a run for us with us, and we're definitely looking forward to the tips that you said you have to provide for us, because we're both under 40 but approaching it swiftly. So
we have jobs.
We're going to need. We're going to need.
Process you should hope continue.
Yes, yes. We're going to continue to do that. Thank you, Mayor Bloomberg. Thank you, Mayor Fry, and to all the other American cities climate challenge winners. We look forward to being your teammate in the work ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. We'd be happy to take some questions first from the press. Are you in the press? Okay. you hear?
Yeah, you gonna go first? Sure.
So the question was, put the $2.5 million in context in terms of our total budget. So in total, we're looking at about a $1.5 billion budget. In terms of the measures specifically focused on climate, I can't give you exact figures offhand, but I'm sure we can get you those. But what I can tell you is the technical assistance and the expertise that they're providing. What it allows us to do is take an initiative, for instance, like moving towards fully electric vehicles, making sure that our entire city fleet is electric. That's just one example. Finding ways to reduce pollution and our carbon output collectively as a city, and it allows us to focus exclusively on that piece, move it forward, and then achieve a clear and tangible goal in the next couple of years. One of the other things that Bloomberg offers is a very data-driven and results-oriented approach. So we can take specific data that is related to our city and our region in the Twin Cities and say, hey, this is what will work best for our Twin Cities collectively to get to a clear result in a matter of, again, a few years.
Let me just add that one of the things we do is to provide technical assistance as well as cash grants. And when I left City Hall, I took half a dozen, maybe, 8 or 9, of our commissioners from New York City and created a nonprofit consulting firm in Bloomberg Philanthropies. So if you have a question about roads and signage and how you do this, that, the other thing, collect data, manage traffic. The woman who ran our transportation department, 12,000 employees, 6 million miles of roads, she has real expertise, and she can come out here and give you some advice. And so it's that kind of thing that we do, city planning, how do you fight corruption, those kinds of things, which we provide services to cities all over the world. Mr. Mayor, do you want to answer?
Yeah, thank you. And that's an important acknowledgement. One of our goals in establishing resilience as a core value for our city and sort of not an initiative is to say that everything that we do needs to be done through a lens of resilience. So that's, I think, one of the things that makes it challenging to articulate $1 amount that says this is what we're doing. Right now in St. Paul, we are, in my budget proposal, we have proposed bringing the investment in our sidewalks up to $1.5 million a year. We've proposed our first ever dedicated funding for bike lanes in our city, and that's to the tune of $500,000 a year. We've just proposed creating an internal loan fund to help us do energy efficient retrofits of city buildings, and that loan fund will be $5 million a year. Obviously, in the context of running a city, we have a lot of challenges and a whole lot of needs that are always kind of front burner issues, but in competition with one another. So having access to the staff, the capacity, the technical assistance, the types of networks that Mayor Bloomberg was just speaking of, and certainly the expertise is incredible for our city.
Other questions? I can just tell you, Mr. Mayor, that with bicycle lanes, my experience was everybody hates them and hates them and hates them until they get in, and then they start using them, and all the criticism goes away, and it just becomes another ways of getting around. And it's become very popular in New York City, where the roads really are chock-a-block full of people and cars and trucks and whatever. And it has turned out to be something that just nobody can remember the days we didn't have it. But when they criticize, just smile sweetly and say you'll see.
That's right.
Other questions? Yes, sir. We've been closing coal-fired power plants for 3 or 4 years now. We have been closing coal-fired power plants. We've closed 279 out of 530, if I remember the numbers. We've been closing coal-fired power plants at the same rate under the Trump administration as we did under the Obama administration, which really tells you that the federal government really isn't involved. Companies close coal-fired power plants and switch to natural gas or to renewables because it is in their interest, the economics work, and also their neighbors want them to do it, and they often live in the neighborhood, and they say, wait a second, I don't want to breathe that stuff any more than my neighbor wants to breathe that stuff. Where all of the progress has been made, it is local governments, It is individuals who turn off their air conditioning before they go to work and paint their roofs white, that sort of stuff. It is companies that do it because it turns out that it is economically good for them, but also their customers want them to do it, their employees want to do it, and particularly their big investors wanted them to do it. So when a big money manager, a Fidelity or a BlackRock or somebody like that goes to visit a corporation and talk about first quarter earnings, the first thing they say is, what are you doing on climate change? Because our investors want us to invest socially responsibly. And so it's not really the federal government, although it certainly doesn't help that Trump goes on and on about this. Although I will say, every time he says something about climate change, the donations come rolling in. Same thing on guns. I think just get him out there speaking a little more, maybe it would be helpful. But the federal government is particularly important on guns. That's where you really need them, not on climate change, although I wish they'd stop doing some of the things. And they have rolled back some regulations, which is not helpful, which will hurt everybody, but it's not the big things. How's this going to impact the politics? Well, I think that, words have meanings. And when you have the President of the United States riling people up, and obviously when people start screaming, lock her up, and he eggs them on, or when he talks about he loves somebody that body blocked a reporter, or none of that stuff is helpful. It isn't even cute. And unfortunately, it has consequences. Some people listen to that and it gives them a green light to go ahead. And we've seen this before. This is what happens when you stop teaching history in schools. And I think we've walked away from that an awful lot. And we're making a very big mistake in our education system. We're destined to repeat the things of the past unless we've learned from them. Other questions? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, let me just remind you of, there's a museum in Washington. I was invited to speak at the opening of the museum. I was the second out of 17 speakers. The last speaker was the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, who endeared himself to me when he stood up and said, "You've got to know your audience." So in conclusion, thank you for coming, and he walked off the stage. We'll do the same thing. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Michael Bloomberg in Minneapolis, along with the mayor of Minneapolis, St. Paul, speaking about climate change there in the city, the Twin Cities. We're going to jump over, though, to the White House press briefing room. Take a look inside. We haven't been here in a long time. They haven't had one actually on camera for weeks now. So we're going to take a look inside. Sarah Sanders will come to the podium shortly and will likely have a lot to say after this week and this weekend events as well.
And failed to protect athletes. This is why I'm filing a lawsuit against USA Gymnastics and others who enabled this abuse. The toxic culture at USA Gymnastics created an environment where we are afraid to come forward. Anything short of perfection was highlighted and picked on endlessly. For example, my personal experience that I endured, a painful back injury, which ended up in an experimental surgery that came about from overtraining and took me out of gymnastics for over a year. That year out of gym kept me from accomplishing my goals. Larry Nassar and these institutions encouraged me to ignore the pain. A culture that encouraged us to stay silent about our pain and injuries to the point where I couldn't walk off the floor. We trusted Larry Nassar to give us care we needed, and instead he took advantage of us and abused us. USA Gymnastics and USOC failed as institutions in their responsibility to protect young people participating in its programs, instead prioritizing winning and protecting themselves. The reason I am coming forward is to help other people heal and encourage, even if it's just one person, to come forward. In fact, since I've shared my story, I've recently had people to me share their own stories of abuse, breaking their silence and beginning that personal healing process. I am also inspired by those who have come before me, and together we can make a long-lasting change in the culture of USA Gymnastics. I want to see change within the sport I love, and believe that the culture of gymnastics should focus on physical, emotional well-being of gymnasts, instill positive body image, and create an environment where athletes feel they can speak up and be heard. This will require more than words on press release or new leadership at these institutions. The stories of survivors must be truly heard. It must be truly heard. And those responsible must be held accountable. Thank you for being here today to hear our stories.
These gymnasts started coming forward at the beginning of January, and now almost 11 months later, we're hearing about this lawsuit. Why come forward now?
The recent developments are what really got my blood boiling, and hers as well, to come forward. Seeing a lot of my teammates over the past year has been difficult to watch, but with the Mary Bono hiring and Steve Penny's arrest, enough is enough. I've had it, especially with hiring. It's clear they don't care about real institutional change. They wanted to put someone up a face up to say, look, we're making change, but it's not real change. And then specific to me, you know, after Steve was arrested and the manipulation that he did to me in terms of releasing a statement on my behalf during the 60 Minutes interview, I felt after him being arrested, I was able to kind of come forward and tell my story with no fear of what would happen if I came forward.
It's very specific change that you believe would really make a difference. What would be significant in your eyes?
So a lot of what we talked about, just the toxic culture, right? The fact that
a different person at the helm.
So again, this cultural of, like, for example, you know, to Steve Penny, to be specific, very intimidating.
Press briefing will begin in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That's right.
Anytime.
Good afternoon. I want to begin today with a few words about the heinous killing of 11 Jewish Americans at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on Saturday. As you know, the shooter is in custody and the FBI is on the scene leading the investigation with the support of state and local law enforcement. This atrocity was a chilling act of mass murder. It was an act of hatred, and above all, it was an act of evil. Anti-Semitism is a plague to humanity, and it is responsible for the worst horrors in human history. We all have a duty to confront anti-Semitism in all its forms and everywhere and anywhere it appears. The American people reject hatred, bigotry, prejudice, and violence. We are a nation that believes in religious liberty, tolerance, and respect. And we are a people who cherish the dignity of every human life. Today, America grieves for the precious lives that were cruelly stolen. Our hearts ache for every person who lost a loved one. The 11 Jewish Americans who were horribly murdered represented the very best of our nation. They were brothers and sisters who looked out for each other. They were doctors who cared for citizens in need. They were proud grandparents who taught their grandchildren to value faith, family, and country. And they were the religious heart of the Tree of Life community. Our nation mourns the loss of these extraordinary Americans, and we also pray for those who were wounded. Our hearts are with the 4 brave police officers who were shot and injured while trying to stop the attack. We thank God for these officers and for every member of law enforcement who responded swiftly and bravely. In the wake of the attack, we have witnessed Americans of every faith and tradition coming together to mourn with their fellow citizens, to support one another, and to stand in solidarity with America's Jewish community. The President cherishes the American Jewish community for everything it stands for and contributes to our country. He adores Jewish Americans as part of his own family. The President is the grandfather of several Jewish grandchildren. His daughter is a Jewish American, and his son-in-law is a descendant of Holocaust survivors. Tomorrow, the President and First Lady will travel to Pennsylvania to express the support of the American people and grieve with the Pittsburgh community. And with that, I will take your questions. Jonathan.
Sir, the President said over the weekend that he could tone up his rhetoric. What does he mean by that? And does he have any concern at all that his words could inspire or provoke troubled people to do awful things?
Certainly, the President wants, in moments where our country is hurting like we've seen in the last several days, find ways to bring our country together, and we've seen him do exactly that. However, the President is going to continue to draw contrasts, particularly as we go into the final days of an election, the differences between the two parties, particularly on policy differences. You'll continue to see him make that contrast, but he has certainly, I think, found those moments to bring our country together and certainly focus on some of the things that all of us can support and all of us can condemn as well.
But he's also harshly attacked some of the very people that received those pipe bombs, and this morning suggesting that the news media is responsible for the anger in the country. How does he do that when, in the case of the pipe bomber, this was somebody who went to Trump rallies, this is somebody who had a van covered with attacks on the media and praise for the president. The shooter in Pittsburgh is somebody who was provoked, it seems, by the caravan that the president has spent so much time talking about. Why is he out there? When you say he's trying to unite the country, why is he out there making these attacks?
The very first thing that the President did was condemn the attacks both in Pittsburgh and in the pipe bombs. The very first thing the media did was blame the President and make him responsible for these ridiculous acts. That is outrageous that would be the very first reaction of so many people across this country. I'm not finished. The only person responsible for carrying out either of these heinous acts were the individuals who carried them out. It's not the President, no more than it was Bernie Sanders' fault for the individual who shot up a baseball field of congressional Republicans. You can't start putting the responsibility of individuals on anybody but the individual who carries out the crime.
But why is the President suggesting it's the news media? The President's the one placing blame here.
No, the President's not placing blame. The President's not responsible for these acts. Again, the very first action that the President did was condemn these heinous acts. The very first thing that the media did was condemn the President and go after and try to place blame, not just on the President, but everybody that works in this administration. The major news network's first public statement was to blame the President, and myself included. I mean, that is outrageous that anybody other than the individual who carried out the crime would hold that responsibility. Steve.
What
What's it going to take to stop these killings from happening over and over and over again?
You know, I think if we had a good answer to that, I think everybody in the country would support it. If anybody knows the answer, I think certainly this administration would be all ears. The president spends every single minute of every single day looking for the best ways to protect the safety and security of Americans, and we're going to continue to do that. John?
There's a second thing. Is the president going to give a speech on immigration this week? What's your thinking about options in terms of closing the border?
We'll keep you posted if there's any scheduling announcement on an address on that topic. I'm not aware of that at this point in time.
11 Jewish leaders in the Pittsburgh area have said that the president's visit is not welcome unless and until he denounces fully and forthrightly white nationalism. Does the White House believe this president has done enough to denounce white nationalism?
The president has denounced racism, hatred, and bigotry in all forms on a number of occasions. We'll continue to do that. I'm doing it here today. And I would also say at the same time that some individuals, they're grieving, they're hurting. The president wants to be there to show the support of this administration for the Jewish community. The rabbi said that he is welcome as well. And certainly we want to show our support for those individuals.
I know that there was another meeting this morning about what to do about the border. You're thinking about an executive action, maybe some sort of regulatory action. Is one of the options being discussed making it impossible for anybody to claim asylum unless they enter through a port of entry? So that would mean that anybody who crosses the border illegally would not be able to make a valid claim of asylum?
There are a lot of options that are being discussed right now. The number one priority is looking for ways to secure our borders. We'd love for Democrats in Congress to actually help step up and do their job and help us do that. If they don't and they're unwilling to do, as they've shown in the past that they are, then we're looking at administrative actions that will help and allow us to do so. Raquel?
Sarah, thank you very much. About the Brazilian election, the State Department repeated today that the commitment to promoting human rights and democracy will continue to guide the relationship with Brazil. However, the Brazilian president-elected, Bolsonaro, has made very controversial comments about minorities. The opposition defended the military dictatorship in Brazil. My question is if the White House plans to address this and ask assurances from the government, the incoming government in Brazil, that they will protect human rights and democracy in Brazil. And another question, what do you think about these comparisons that a lot of people say?
Let me address the first thing.
Sure.
First, we promote human rights all over the world. We value our long-standing relationship with Brazil. We want to continue to be able to work with them. We'll see what happens from there.
Sarah, can I just, okay, so what do you think about these comparisons? A lot of people are calling Bolsonaro the Trump of the tropics. And if President Trump plans to invite Bolsonaro to the White House, or if he has any plans to go to Brazil anytime soon, maybe attend Bolsonaro's inauguration.
There's only one Donald Trump, in my opinion. Stephen, go ahead.
I'd like to follow up on John's question about caravan. The president has used the word invasion to describe this caravan. That's the same word that is mentioned in the Constitution 3 times, invasion, with respect to the powers of the federal government to repel invasion. So my question is have there been any discussions here with respect to that, about the fact that the Constitution provides for example, the suspension of habeas corpus if to repel an invasion, if the public safety requires it? Is the president talking about potentially ignoring posse comitatus by having the military go down? There's a provision in the law that allows for a constitutional exemption. Is that in any way under consideration?
We're looking at a number of different options. I know that the Department of Defense is holding a press conference this afternoon at 4 o'clock to talk about some of the actions that they'll be taking. I would encourage you to tune into that. John?
A note of my question. It has not been ruled out. Those are options on the table?
Look, I'm not going to get into specific policies that we're considering. There's a number of actions that we're looking at taking. When we're ready to make an announcement on that front, we'll let you know. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. The midterms are 8 days from today, and we often get from both parties what the midterms actually mean the day after the election. So I wanted to ask you what the midterms mean before the election. The president on October the 18th in Mississippi said, I'm not on the ticket, but I am on the ticket because this is also a referendum on me. Is that right? Is this midterm election a referendum on the president?
Look, I can't get into specifics that will impact the election, but I can tell you that the president wants to see more people that support his policies elected than not. Phil.
Sarah, it's now been 4 weeks since Jamal Khashoggi was murdered inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The president said early on that if the Saudis are found responsible, there would be severe punishment. That's his word. It's now obvious to the world that Khashoggi was murdered. It was premeditated. It was by the Saudis. Why has there been no action?
Look, the president met last week with CIA Director Gina Haspel after having gathered additional intelligence on her overseas trip, and the administration is weighing different options and will make an announcement about what the decision of that action is.
Is he considering any actual action?
Like I just said, the administration is considering what action we'll take moving forward based on that information and the briefing that the president received last week. Jill.
I want to go back to the tone question, because the president said he was planning to tone down his rhetoric this week. But at his rallies, since the suspicious packages began being mailed, the president has called out Maxine Waters by name at his rallies. He stood there as his supporters chant "lock her up" in reference to Hillary Clinton, who he continues to call crooked Hillary Clinton. Will the president stop using that kind of language in light of the fact that these individuals were targeted by his attack?
The president's going to continue to draw contrast. Let's not forget that these same Democrats have repeatedly attacked the president, whether it was Eric Holder saying kick them when they're down, whether it was Hillary Clinton saying you can't be civil until Democrats have control of Congress, or whether it was Maxine Waters who encouraged her supporters to get up, not just in the president's face, but all administration officials' faces. Those actions are from those Democrats. The president's going to continue to fight back when these individuals not only attack him, but attack members of his administration and supporters of his administration. John?
Sorry, go ahead. Follow up on something else. Why does the president feel like it's necessary to send active duty troops to the border when he's already sent National Guardsmen down there who are doing the exact same job as the active duty troops would be able to do?
The president's #1 job and #1 priority is to protect the safety and security of Americans, and he's going to do what he deems necessary in order to do that. For specifics regarding that, I'd encourage you to tune into the press conference this afternoon. John?
Thank you, Sarah. 2 brief questions. The first, a follow-up about the question on Brazil. Up until a few months ago, you used to give us readouts of the president's calls with world leaders, including congratulatory calls to newly elected leaders, such as President Macron, Chancellor Merkel. Did the president, or does the president plan to make a call to President-elect Bolsonaro?
He did, and he spoke with him last night. I actually sent a note to the White House press pool. If you didn't receive that, I'll make sure you do after the briefing's over. Sorry.
Sarah, is this, with the election 8 days away, some Republicans, such as Mr. Hugan, the nominee for the Senate in New Jersey, do not mention the president at all, do not invoke his name or image. Others, such as Mr. DeWine, running for governor of Ohio, have him in brochures and pictures. Is the president aware that some candidates run against him, and is this going to enter into his decision where to go in the final days?
That's a decision for individual candidates to make. I think the president has an incredible story to tell. He's had a historic first 2 years, a number of successes that I think any Republican running for office should be proud of. Jim.
Sir, yeah, I wanted to ask you, David Lappin, who was spokesperson over at DHS under General Kelly, Chief of Staff Kelly, a former Marine, worked at the Pentagon, tweeted this morning, I dealt with the news media nearly every day. I know quite a bit about the press and know this. They are not the enemy of the American people. Shouldn't you reserve the term enemy for people who are actually the enemy of the United States rather than journalists?
The president's not referencing all media. He's talking about the growing amount of fake news that exists in the country, and the president's calling that out.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
May I ask a follow-up, please? May I ask a
Jim.
follow-up, please? Since you mentioned that, the president said this morning the fake news media, the true enemy of the people, must stop the open and obvious hostility and report the news accurately and fairly. Can you state for the record which outlets that you and the president regard as the enemy of the people?
I'm not going to walk through a list, but I think those individuals probably know who they are.
Would that include my outlet, which received
I don't think it's necessarily specific to a general, broad generalization of a full outlet at times. I think there's individuals that the president would be referencing. Jordan.
So you're not going to state for the record then I mean, if the president is going to say the fake news media are the enemy of the people, and if you're going to stand there and continue to say that there are some journalists, some news outlets in this country that meet that characterization, shouldn't you have the guts, Sarah, to state which outlets, which journalists are the enemy of the people?
Well, I think it's irresponsible of a news organization like yours to blame responsibility of a pipe bomb that was not sent by the president, not just blame the president, but blame members of his administration for those heinous acts. I think that is outrageous, and I think it's irresponsible. Jordan, go ahead.
Sarah, we didn't say that.
Jim, I've given you 3 questions. Jordan, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. The president has talked multiple times about how the Republican lawmakers are going to protect pre-existing conditions if they keep control of Congress. But the administration is supporting a lawsuit that would undercut those protections under Obamacare and taken a couple of regulatory actions to that effect as well. So how do you square those two stances? And what's the plan, the Republican plan for protecting the
The president's health care plan that he's laid out covers pre-existing conditions. The president wants to lower premiums to make health care more affordable. Nobody will be charged higher premiums if they keep their coverage, and nobody will be denied coverage under the president. Emerald?
Thank you, Sarah. On Chancellor Merkel's announcement that she'll be stepping down as party leader and won't seek to rerun as chancellor, what is the reaction from the administration, and how does that affect the relationship with Germany going forward?
We're aware of the announcement, and this is an internal matter for Chancellor and the German people. We're going to continue to work with the Chancellor and continue to develop that relationship. Blake?
Sarah, why did the president
Blake,
call
go ahead.
Andrew Gillum a thief? Why did the president in his tweet call Andrew Gillum a thief?
April, I'll come back to you. Blake, go ahead.
Sarah, thank you. Before you walked out here, just a handful of minutes before you walked out, there was a report that said, should the meeting between President Trump and President Xi of China not go well in terms of easing the trade war and the trade tensions, then at that point the U.S. would go forth with the $257 billion in tariffs. Is that indeed the timetable that the administration is working with here?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president's meeting, and I hope it goes well. April, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
How important is that meeting then? Because we heard Larry Kudlow say last week or 2 weeks ago that maybe there might not be a lot of detail that comes from it in terms of the trade and going back and forth.
As the president likes to say, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to get ahead of the conversation. You have 2 of the most powerful leaders in the world. I think that's consequential no matter how you look at it, and we'll see what happens when they sit down. April, go ahead.
The president's tweeting today, in one tweet specifically, he called Andrew Gillum, the Democratic nominee for governor in Florida, a thief. What is his definition of that statement? And also I want to ask you about issues of voter suppression. The president has talked about voter fraud.
Let me answer your first question. That individuals under FBI investigation, I would refer you to that. I'm not going to get into specifics on that matter because it involves 2 candidates running for office, and I'm not going to impact that due to the Hatch Act. I'll leave that to the president to make those types of statements. And your second question.
Yes, second question. The president talks about voter fraud at a time when there are allegations and proof of voter suppression taking place in the state of Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is ahead of the Republican contender, and also in North Dakota, where Native Americans who don't have a street address but have a P.O. box if they live on reservations, they're not able to vote. So what's going on with that? Is the president talking about that? Is he working
Certainly,
on that issue?
we don't support any type of voter suppression. What we do support is voter integrity. Again, I'm not going to weigh into specifics that have impact on this election that's a few days away. I'll leave that for the president to lay out that specific case. Sager, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. Could you tell us, does the White House currently believe that they have the legal authority to close the southern border? And is that an option that's being explored with relation to the caravan?
Again, we have a number of options on the table. We're exploring each one of those. When we have a decision on that, we'll let you know. Vivian.
Thanks, Sarah. 2 questions, please. First, last week we asked the president whether he'd call President Obama or any of the others that the bombs were addressed to, and he said, if they want me to, but will probably pass. Can you explain why that decision was taken?
The president did speak with Governor Cuomo of New York last week, and as of this time, there aren't any plans for other calls. If there are, we'll let you know. Hallie, go ahead.
So
Last
can I
question.
ask one more about Jamal Khashoggi? Can you tell us if CIA Director Haspel actually heard the tape that the Turks allegedly have
proving that he was killed in the embassy?
I can't confirm or deny the specifics of the intelligence that Director Haspel saw while she was there. Last question, Hallie, go ahead.
So throughout the course of this briefing, you have repeatedly defended the president's attacks on his political opponents as valid because the midterms are coming up. So at what point does the White House
Not because of the midterms. I've defended the president. I've defended the president fighting back when he's regularly attacked. There's a difference. Doesn't matter if there's a midterm or not. The president's going to defend himself and he's going to fight back.
From a political perspective, right? You're making that point.
From any perspective.
But at what point does a national tragedy take precedence over the president needing to punch back? If not now, when?
I think you saw the president do exactly that in the wake of a national tragedy, not just this week, but every time our country has experienced the type of heartache and pain that we have over the last week. This is a president who's risen to that occasion and worked to bring our country together in a number of occasions, whether it's the hurricanes, whether it's the Las Vegas shooting, whether it was the Pittsburgh shooting, all horrible, horrible tragedies that this country has experienced. And this president has come out, condemned the attacks when it is caused by an individual, and tried to look for ways to provide and bring the country together when it was a natural disaster.
Both he and you have also acknowledged that in the next breath, after he calls for unity, he does talk about division in what you describe as drawing contrast. Is he incapable of, in the words of some, toning it down and toning down the rhetoric?
Again, I think the president has had a number of moments of bringing the country together. Once again, I'll remind you that the very first thing the president did was condemn the attacker, and the very first thing the media did was blame the president. You guys have a huge responsibility to play in the divisive nature of this country when 90% of the coverage of everything this president does is negative, despite the fact that the country is doing extremely well, despite the fact that the president is delivering on exactly what he said he was going to do if elected. And he got elected by an overwhelming majority of 63 million Americans who came out and supported him and wanted to see his policies enacted. He's delivered on that. He's delivered on the promises he's made. And if anything, I think it is sad and divisive the way that every single thing that comes out of the media, 90% of what comes out of the media's mouths is negative about this president. Despite the fact that the economy is booming, despite the fact he said he would fix the trade deals, and he's done exactly that. He said he would defeat ISIS, and he has. The president has been delivering day in, day out, and I think it would be nice if every once in a while we could focus on a few of the positive things the president has done instead of just attacking him. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
No responsibility.